let's jump back into Oriental Adventures 1, Swords of the Daimyo. What's up, Adam? What's up, GTF? When last we left off, we were at Adventure 3, so let's just jump over there. Adventures! What up, Zane? Adventure 3, Lord of the Black Temple. So, as a reminder, using the Asians read criteria, we're going to look at how the West portrays themselves as better or in need of saving, or sorry, as oh gosh, what's the word? Yes, how Oriental Adventures makes the West more civilized than the East. Asians are seen as violent. Asians are seen as savage and need to be saved. And Asians are the object of fetishization. I should copy and paste that and put that on a note somewhere. What's up, Kelsey? Save that there to refer back to, because it's a really good thing. I think Daniel hit it on the head with Oriental Adventures there. So Adventure 3, Lord of the Black Temple. This adventure is for a party of 4 to 8 characters of 3rd to 5th levels. It continues the story of the Black Temple begun in the second adventure. It is assumed that some time has passed between that adventure and this, allowing the player characters to reach the proper levels. So again, this is really interesting because we're in Adventure 3, says that it's designed for 3rd to 5th level. Adventure 1, which is, if you're going from Faerun to Karator, if you want to import your Faerun characters, import your white characters, your Western characters into Karator, you have to be level 6. So, off the bat, the adventurers from Adventure 1 are better than those from 2 and 3. Better than those than they will be after finishing 3. So, that's interesting. And still very Last Samurai. Very, very white savior. We're better than them. We can do this entire adventure faster and more efficiently than them, because we're level 6. We're more competent. It is assumed that some time has passed. During this time, the player characters may have other adventures of their own creation, or may simply have spent the time searching for clues and information about the Black Temple. Information the characters can gain in the course of the adventure includes the following: the name of the Sohei commander who attacked the Muda, the names of other Muda that had been forced to pay the Black Temple, a history of the practices of the temple, the general location of the temple. Armed with one or all of these bits of information, the player characters should eventually be led to the Mur of Mudo. This rests in one of the secluded valleys that reaches up into the Kurasi Miyaku. As referee, you should decide the exact hex location. Okay. That's fine. I don't know how well that naming convention is, but it's just like, as the GM, you decide where this place is. All morning, the trail you've been following has been winding through a thick grove. The weather has been pleasantly cool, and the flowers of the wood have added soothing bursts of color to the dark green background. Several times you have seen signs of previous travelers, churned earth drop-ins, broken branches, and discarded bits of gear. They are a fairly large group, and do not seem to be making any effort to hide their movements. It is unlikely that they are bandits or malevolent creatures. Following the trail along a young stand of bamboo. When did we get to bamboo? We were in a grove a second. What? Okay. What's your question, TGF? Broken bamboo lays across the trail, the stalks spattered with blood and slashed by sword cuts. An opening of crushed and cut plants plunges into the dark grove. In the shadows at the end is an unmoving form, standing with his back to you. So the difference is that there is the white savior trope, and so because I put these on YouTube now. The question is, I know one of the criticisms I'm bringing up is how the player character is supposed to be better and saving, which is fair in the context, of course, but what makes it different from the usual? We're better and saving everyone. That's present in all D&D. The thing is that it is an issue in all of D&D. In all of D&D and most adventure games, it's a fantasy trip. The difference is that when you have the white hero saving in a European setting, there's nothing special or unique about it. It is still a bit of an issue because it's I need to save these people because I'm better and more fortunate than they are. Um, it's kind of like Steve Rogers in that sense, where it's like, okay, so it's a messiah complex. You need to sacrifice yourself to save everybody else. But in the context of um, Oriental Adventures, having white heroes who are who enter the game better than the Asian adventure and then the Oriental characters will be at the start all the way through to the end gives the idea that the the people in Kazakura need to be saved by somebody who's by the white heroes. They need to be saved by these adventures from them. It's all about the context then, about specifically Faerun, i.e. white Europe coming to this new exotic place and saving everyone there too. Yes. It is a problematic trope in and of itself, but add in the context of Oriental Adventures and it becomes a lot more problematic. Um, because yeah, it's a case of I need to save them because I'm better than them. And they can be as good as me, but they aren't. So I must save them. I.e., a la Tom Cruise in Last Samurai. I need to save them because I'm the one who's familiar with these things and from a more civilized environment and am better than they will ever be. Uh, Hung up in the broken stalks of bamboo is a dead swordsman. He is pitched forward into the bamboo, his sleeves tangled in the sharp stalks. His shoulders sag and his legs are limp under him. Thick blood soaks the back of his slashed shirt. The swordsman is quite dead and obviously has been robbed. Investigating the area shows many signs of a small battle. Slashed bamboo, blood, and another dead body, also picked clean of anything valuable. The bodies are still warm, so the attack could not have occurred too long ago. The trail leads out through the bamboo and disappears across a patch of rocky ground. Pressing on a little farther, you see a traveler on the road ahead of you. He is headed in your direction. He is about 40 yards away, and you can tell by his dress he is wealthy. As the traveler approaches, it's obvious that he has been in a recent battle. He is wounded and weak. Something about this is rubbing me the wrong way. It kind of feels like the bamboo is like they've thrown it in there to be like, well, what kind of environment would there be? I know. It's a forest in Asia. It's a bamboo forest. We need to talk about the bamboo as much as possible. Um, which isn't a bad thing. Like, I've never been in a bamboo forest. Um, I've seen pictures of it, and it can be as crowded and busy as a regular forest, but it feels like they're using it as a backdrop to be like it's Asia. It has to be bamboo. Bamboo is a type of grass, not a tree. Yeah, but it grows pretty high and can be forest like. So I'm not upset by that. Um, but it definitely feels like they're adding it in for the sake of being like, ah yes, this is Asia. So can grass. True, that is true. If the characters attack, he begs for mercy, unwilling to put up any resistance. I don't like that it's immediately if the characters attack. Um, there's nothing there about if the characters don't attack. It's just if the characters attack. What happens if they don't attack? Are they expected to attack? This wealthy person who looked like they were in a fight? I mean, I guess it's D&D, so probably, but that just feels in bad faith. I don't like in bad faith stuff like that. You find Pokemon in tall grass? I mean, that tall grass is like waist high at best. Um, if the character attacks, he begs for mercy, unwilling to put up any resistance. He introduces himself as a traitor, Kuda no Nito. They keep adding like no to be like this is a Japanese name. But I'm pretty sure that just means Nito of the Kuda, which, like, I don't know. I don't. It's a weird naming convention. That Dave Cook has put in this. But it is his sorrow to report that he was set upon and robbed by bandits. They took all his goods and slew his two assistants. It is only by great fortune that he escaped, but unfortunately all his goods were stolen. He was carrying a load of weapons and suspects that the peasants of one of the nearby Mora may have arranged the raid. He then asks the characters if they would recover his goods. If they seem hesitant, he offers them a reward of 10 shien. If the characters take him up on his offer, he tells them where the Myodo is and warns them that the peasants might be alarmed now. After all, he points out, they did steal his weapons from him. Then they give him a stat block in case you want to just kill him. For some reason. Um, hmm. When they arrive at the Mura, the players notice that it is a poor and backward village. The Minka are in sad repair, and the villagers are particularly thin, hungry looking. Several of the buildings are nothing but burned out shells. A few animals are nosing around the corners of buildings. It is getting dark. Myoto is a Mura of 98 inhabitants of all ages. There are 38 large Minka or similar buildings. 10 of these on the outskirts of the Mura have been burned or crushed. There are only 12 effective warriors in the Mura, all first level Bushi. We're back to Bushi. Like, they could have just could have given a stat block, but they chose Bushi, which is fine because they've said they're effective warriors this time at least, instead of this second adventure where they were like, there are 8 people who are willing to fight. They suck at it. They're first level Bushi. Which actually makes the first one a little bit worse. If this one's like there are 12 effective warriors in the Mura, who are all first level Bushi, that puts them on par with the militia we met in Adventure 2. Um, in this one where they're like there are 8 first level Bushi in the village, but they suck. They all suck. Yeah, 8 men capable of fighting. First level Bushi, unarmored and armed with spears. Um, but we get a completely different wording. 12 effective warriors, all first level Bushi. Not even like second level Bushi or anything. It's just the exact same character block, but it just tells the GM that they're worse, which feels like irrelevant flavor. The Myoshu of the Moro is Ochio, a middle-aged and quite worn-down man. His responsibilities are great, and this does not sit well with him, since he is by nature indecisive. His lot is made even worse by his shrewish and nagging wife. Although she is outwardly meek and obedient, in private moments she is loud and domineering. What's up, Corey? Hmm. This is one of those things where, like, what a phrase to walk in on. Yep. This is one of those things where it's like, if you had given me this about, like, a white person, I would be fine with it. Like, I wouldn't be fine with it, but I would be like, okay, haha, it's funny because, it just is. it's designed to be comic relief with white people. But with this one, it kind of feels off. It's one of those things where it's like, which spell was it that they have in AD&D and OA? I think it was Charm Snake, where it's like, on its own, yes, it's problematic and an issue. Add it into this, and it becomes more problematic because of the setting that you've created it in. Not all of Uchiha's problems stem from his personality or his family. However, Myoto is currently under a woeful oppression that is taxing the resources of all in the Mora. As the player characters enter the Mora, they are the objects of suspicious stares. There seem to be no friendly faces here. Suddenly, the Mora's alarm gong sounds, ringing through the village. The peasants run from their huts towards the west end of the village. A poorly dressed old man strides from the Minka nearest the characters. With barely a nod in their direction, he shouts, "Hurry! You must flee before the Dione sees you! Hurry!" He then turns and runs after the other villagers. If the player characters chase, follow, or talk to this peasant or any others, run the ritual encounter. If the characters leave the village or hide somewhere nearby, go to the Dione encounter. Hmm. It's I genuinely don't like that. It's like not all of his problems stem from the fact that he's weak and indecisive, or the fact that his wife is loud and domineering. Like that sentence is so unnecessary. It's genuinely like not all of the problems stem from the fact that he's a coward and his wife is stronger than him. You could have just added in his other problems. If he's in charge of the village, like obviously he has other problems. It's not going to be, you know, an everlasting rice mortar. Um, it it just feels like an unnecessary call out. He is henpecked, which we all know is the worst thing a man can be. Not just that, but like I said, he not only is it that he's henpecked, he's henpecked in a setting where it's like I guess it's stereotyped that we would be like that. Like hmm, the fuck is henpecked? Whipped. Whipped basically. But like whipped in a sense where the woman is just extremely domineering. He just needs a couple whacks of the lucky mallet. Adam, that would kill him. That would kill him. He probably doesn't have very much health. He would just die. It does like 2d6 points of damage. Quickly, you follow the small stream of villagers. In small clumps and knots, they gather at a. Adam, just one does 2d6 points of damage. Yeah, the wife wears the pants in the relationship. Therefore, you're weak. Quickly, you follow the small stream of villagers. In small clumps and knots, they gather in a circle of packed dirt. In the center is a large stone slab topped with a huge drum. An old man, perhaps a village elder, climbs up to the drum and begins beating it with slow, rhythmic strokes. What? Between each beat, he chants praises to the Dione, the great Oni. The village slowly begins to shuffle in and out, ignoring you, while they perform their ritual dance. With each verse of this chant, they give a shout, punctuating the ritual. Finally, on an outward turn of the dance, a pretty peasant maiden turns to you with her head bowed and says, "Please, honorable strangers, leave so our village will be spared." Oh boy. Oh boy. Didn't we just meet the villagers? Like, he told us to hide, Oh, he told us to flee. He told us to flee before the Dione sees us. You watched Air Force One yesterday and you laughed when the main guy was trying to shoot the president for following Secret Service procedure and escaping the hijacked plane. I I also really don't like how it's like, please, honorable strangers. Because, like, we come back to this thing about honor, which, like, Asian people don't give a fuck about. If they're gonna do that, it should have been like, uh, please flee so that we may be saved. Yeah, honorable strangers. It feels like one of those, like, shitty American Hong Kong movies where it's like, oh, honorable stranger, you must save me. Ooh. Which is just some bullshit. Um, Armed and dangerous individual. Definitely honorable. No, the Dione is the dangerous one. But, like, it's so weird because we show up to this village. These people have heard of adventurers. Oh, God, you're right. We show up to this village, and, you know, they're like, you need to flee quickly. If we even simply talk to the peasant. If we talk to anybody, they're like, you need to flee. They're clearly afraid of this Dione. And they're like, worshiping him? The first two peasants the questions attempt to quest the first two peasant questions the characters attempt to question refuse to say anything useful. The first is evasive, trying to avoid saying anything. The second refuses outright to talk to the player characters. If pressed, he becomes hysterical, demanding they leave, claiming this is all their fault. If the characters find the old man they saw in the village, he is willing to talk, but also quite fearful of something. He tells the player characters to meet him in his hut later that night. Wait, that's it. That that's all we get. We don't get where to go afterwards. It's just, if you talk to them, they tell you to leave, and they bully you into leaving. I'm just, it's not even like a worship. It's a weird sense of, like, they're literally worshiping him, not like just simply praising the ground that he walks on. They're literally worshiping him, which is so weird. Um, but it definitely falls in line with the whole, ah, outsiders must be worshipped because they're different. Um, and, the Dione is very far outside from us. Um, they're outsiders and stronger. And this whole paragraph here just doesn't make sense to me at all. Like, if the players ask questions, nobody will talk to them except for the one old man who's like, talk to me later in my home. Also, yeah, the peasants are just dumb and easily cowed. Um, as the villagers perform their ritual, there suddenly comes a loud voice. Okay, so you move into. Wait, so hold on. So if we run or hide, we skip this bit and go straight to this. But if we stay in the village, we do this bit and then go to this. So there's no, like, there's no real um what's the word I'm looking for? There's no real autonomy here. There's no real player choice. It's literally, do you stay or do you leave? If you stay, there's like a quick little thing, and then we continue the story. I mean, if you're going to give me a module, make it like a choose your own adventure story. Give me 30 endings. Give me 30 possible endings. I mean, obviously the players should work towards the module, in my opinion. I'm one of those people who's like, if you're working on a module, the players should work with you to not be like, oh, I want to go do this instead, even though we're working on this module. Like, if they do that, then they're being an asshole. Um, old style monster. Yeah, I guess. But this is like we keep getting into this problem where there's no actual player autonomy. Um, as the villagers perform their ritual, there suddenly comes a loud voice booming over the heads of the crowd. Instantly, so don't give a shit about that. Yeah, apparently. Instantly, the villagers fall silent. The old and the cowardly drop to their knees, shivering. Kneel! Cries the echoing voice. Looking upward, you see a huge common oni. So, we're told here, praises to the Dai Oni, which means great oni, and then we get told it's just a common oni. And like, here's the fun thing about OA oni. They're really boring. They're not. Let's pull this up. Um, they're really, really boring. Like, when I was on Asians Read doing the monsters with them, all the monsters were kind of boring. They were dull and not really worth anybody's time, even though they make this huge deal about it. And we have a ton of like Asian monsters are some of the coolest things. Like I love reading about like yokai and stuff. Uh, but like we meet a common oni, which is a lesser spirit. Oni, lesser spirit, common. Um, it has like nine, sorry, 8 hit dice, which is, I guess that's like a little bit out of a player, like the 3 to 5 player character range. I mean, yes, Adam. The common oni is in fact rare. It's a rare encounter, with the Gozu and the Meizu being very rare. One oni is enough to subjugate an entire village. It's technically like CR8. I guess this is the best way to look at it. It has 8 hit dice. Um, I'm slowly understanding what OSR numbers mean. Um, so it's a little bit more than like a a village can handle, but we have to keep in mind that they have 12 first level bushi on their side, and the oni isn't single handedly doing it. It's the oni and the black stuff. Yeah, also that it's AD&D. Like 4 to 8 players at third level would lose this fight probably. Um, but it's still weird that they're like the great oni, the Dai oni, and then it's just a common oni, not a Gozu or a Meizu, a common oni. I'm also really disappointed that there isn't like pictures of the oni because oni are amazing. Like I love art for the oni. See if I can find a good like. Yeah, like. See, is this big? It's not gonna zoom in. Well, maybe this one will let me zoom. Nope, it's still a small picture. Um, yeah, you have like statues of like the Oni and stuff. You have the Oni masks. These are terrifying creatures. I'm trying to find ones that are actually like depictions of Oni and not like anime. Um, yeah. So like these things are fucking terrifying. So so I'm just really disappointed that they passed up that opportunity. Um, for this. Uh, After the Dione speaks, 3 men in armor and 2 in robes come down the hill towards the stone slab. As the men approach, the Dione again speaks. Now, insects, what tribute have you brought for the Black Temple? Approach and present it. Three of the village women approach the altar with wicker backpacks. At the stone slab, they empty their backpacks, unload an assortment of weapons. Wait, so the weapons that were stolen from Nito. So, here's what I find really weird. We're supposed to play Adventure 3 after Adventure 2. That's typically how these things go. And it says outright that the players, if they do research on the Black Temple, would find these things about it. And now we're like, it's like we're here and suddenly it's like, oh, you need another plot hook to care about the Black Temple. It's like, why do we need to care about the Black Temple more? You could have just been like, the Black Temple is here. Saying technically we don't have to do 1, so it is worth noting that it's expected that we do 3 after 2. Because you can just skip 1. Because 1 is for importing your characters from AD&D. From normal AD&D. Player characters recognize the weapons from the merchant Nito's descriptions. As player characters are among the crowd and do not kneel, one of the men without armor brusquely orders them to kneel. If the player characters refuse or are slow to react, he imperiously strides over and knocks them into the dirt. No save, just knocks them into the dirt. Seeing them close up, I understand this is D&D, but I actually care a lot about player autonomy, so that bugs me. He realizes that they are not from the village. If the player characters do not resist, he orders his men to take the player characters and bind them. If the player characters attack the men or resist them, a melee erupts. The villagers flee in panic. Some scream in curses at the player characters as soon as the fight starts. The Dione turns and strides away over the hill, disappearing from sight. Wait, so we roll up. We're clearly here to start shit. Especially if we're actually resisting and fighting. And the Dione is just like, yes, my men can handle this. And just fucks off. What? Why would he not stick around to make sure we get killed? Oh no, they resisted. I must leave. My men will deal with this. If the player characters manage to reach the Dione before he disappears, they discovered only a costume. Inside is a puppeteer on short stilts. He has a Wujen / a ninja. Wait, that's even more stupid! You're telling me that these people saw something that looked like this. A big fuck-off monster with a huge-ass club. And, yes, common Oni are rare. Fine. I would be shocked if we live in a if we exist in a world where these monsters exist. The Oni is just 3 ninjas in a trench coat. Like, we live in a world where these shit exist. Like, you create the masks to mimic the Oni because you know the Oni exist. Gosh, I wish there were more actual pictures of Oni and not like fan art. Like, you get some big fuck off monster that looks like this, and it's actually just a ninja in a trench coat. Like, yeah, all it does is like, you were the first people to have revealed that the Oni isn't actually an Oni. It's also worth noting, I didn't notice this until we were talking about it on the Monster stream. Everybody we fought to this point is human. Which, fine. That's awesome. Fighting humans is cool. When you have a world of fantasy and you set it up such that you need to fight things too. But have we fought Dancer? Oh my goodness. Um, no, because we only fight humans. When you set up this world where the West is coming in, where the white people are coming in, and you have the choice to be like, we can have you fight monsters, or we can have you fight people, and you choose to make them fight people, that says something. Are we Dancer? Only if you're a bard, or a Sohei, I guess. Uh, but it says something that the game keeps pushing us towards fighting people, especially when we have the opportunity to fight an Oni, because we get set up to do this fight against an Oni, against a monster, an actual monster, and then they're like, surprise, the real monster was human. We're the Asian. It was the ninja. But if you're the Bambi, what? Oh, the bamboo spirit? Um, no, that's a samurai. The samurai can't dance. The signs are vital. My heart is cold. Um, I'm on my knees begging for an answer. Because holy shit, this is raising so many questions that, like, actually need to be answered. Uh, but, but just don't. Um, I mean, punks do dance. Just what we call dancing isn't what other people call dancing. They're like, that's gyrating and not dancing. It's not a dance, punk kid. And I'm like, fuck you. Um, if the player characters attack the men or resist them, uh, yes. 2 rounds after the Dione disappears, the Wujen ninja appears at the top of the. So you have to fight the ninja no matter what? This. Excuse me while I go change. Two rounds after the Dione appears, the Wujen slash ninja appears at the top of the hill to help in the fight. He attacks the characters from a safe distance. If things look bad, he drinks a potion of invisibility and makes his escape. Reporting what has transpired to the Black Temple. If he escapes, the PCs meet him again in the Tengu Discovered encounter. Ooh, we gotta meet a Tengu? Fun fact. The Tengu are humanoids. Not yokai, humanoids. Another thing that really bugs me. Because like so I'm gonna go off on a tangent for a second because like Japanese monsters are some of the coolest shit. A lot of people gave Pokemon shit for like Garbodor and stuff. I haven't done that already. This one's a real tangent. So a lot of people when Pokemon, oh gosh, which edition? Which version? I think it was X and Y. I think it was XY when Garbodor came out. When Garbodor and Trubbish were revealed. It was Black and White? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Black White did that. Garbodor was a Pokemon that was literally just a bag of garbage. Um, a lot of people gave Pokemon shit. They were like, oh, Pokemon ran out of ideas. They literally just created a Pokemon that was a bag of trash. They created a Pokemon that's just a sandcastle. That's what yokai are. And that to me, that's so cool to me. Like, they made a Pokemon that's just an ice cream cone. That's what yokai are. They're spirits that like possess things around them, and it fits the region. Yeah, those are just yokai. Because the sentient toxic waste wasn't a Pokemon since Red and Blue. Yeah, like that's what yokai are, and Gygax was given an opportunity. I'm going to say Gygax here because I'm talking about Oriental Adventures, not about Swords of the Daimyo. Gygax had an opportunity to create yokai. He had an opportunity to be like, there are living swords running around. There are uh, there are the Tengu, and all of these things. Um, like even if he wanted to stick to the basic pre-existing yokai, and with the Tengu, the Kappa, and the Oni, um, he decided against that. Like, uh, so the Oni we get is a fearsome spirit. Cool, we get that one correct. If we go to the Kappa, uh, the Kappa are a race of amphibious humanoid creatures found in lakes, ponds, and streams of fresh water. If you had an actual Tengu, Mecha Tengu would make it. Wait. Um, and then you have the Tengu. The Tengu are a race of bird-like humanoid creatures found in uninhabited mountain areas. Like, we're given these Tengu, three yokai, sorry, that exist, and Gygax was just like, two of them are actually humanoids, and it upsets me so much because because yokai are cool. Yokai are so awesome. Like, even if you didn't want to do like outright yokai and be like, there's a living sword. Ignoring the fact that he did that in fifth edition, in regular D&D, with the animated armor and that stuff. Um, we could have gotten that, but instead we get humans. You get alternative humans, and like, yes, fine. Maybe it's because Gygax wanted to have them be playable, maybe. But we don't get that. We don't get a character stat block for the Tengu or the Kappa. We just get them as monsters. Shitty monsters. Anyway. Anyway, we deal with the Tengu in this adventure, apparently. The five men fight until either their leader, the Kensai, sees NPC statistic following, falls, or they lose 3 men. Should either of these events occur, the men attempt to flee, crossing the hill and disappearing into the woods. If the player characters kneel with the villagers, it may appear as if they are going to escape safely. The men come down to the slab and admire their weapons, loading them into baskets. At this point, a scruffy peasant, not far from the player character, starts towards the men. His actions and intentions are obvious to any watchful player characters, i.e., anyone who is specifically watching the entire crowd, not just the men. Unless restrained by subtle arguments, such as the gentle pressure of a knife in the back, the peasant runs forward to the men and flings himself at the feet. Pleading mercy for himself, his family, his village, he turns to the player character saying, So... So we get more... The peasants are cowardly and weak. Taking all the monsters can be used as PCs thanks to how tab block conversion works. It may just have been 335. It may have been 335. I think it's a lot... I think it's different in AD&D. Um, but yeah. Yeah, we made that joke. It was like, if you get knocked prone, do you just start making saving throws to die? It's like, yep. Um, but it would still be funny. But not that Gygax would care anyway. Firstly, secondly, uh, so we get into another point where it's like, the peasants are cowardly and weak. Death saving throws aren't a thing in this game. True, you just die. Um, like this peasant is a coward, which again, it's one thing when it's in a European setting because everybody there is, for intents and purposes, equal. The average villager is no different from the adventurer in culture. I guess is the word I'm looking for. They're no different in culture. Yeah, he's a coward and a narc. If you hit -10, you just die. No, I think that's 3-5, where you get into -10 point, where you get bloodied, um, and you drop into -10, then you die. Um, but if you're playing like white people, and I'm willing to bet the majority of people who were playing this adventure were white, it portrays the adventurers as, sorry, it portrays Asia as cowardly, as being like, it portrays these Japanese peasants as being cowardly and afraid of these things, and being like, oh, even though you didn't notice these people, I'm gonna snitch on them because I fear for my people, which is so dumb. If the player characters manage to avoid detection, the men gather the weapons and go up the hill. All right, later, Saint. Thank you for sticking around. And yeah, no, it is absolutely horrible, and it needs to be pointed out like why it's horrible. Because I'm not just gonna be like, oh, the Oriental Adventures modules suck. People will be like, no, that's just AD&D. You didn't read it. I'm reading it, and like, I am making concessions by saying, okay, fine, it's AD&D. Here's where I'm taking issue from a cultural standpoint. The player characters manage to avoid detection. The men gather the weapons and go back up the hill. The Dione roars out, "This time you have pleased me. My blessing and my protection is over you. On the next moon I will return." With that, the entire group turns and strides away. Darkness prevents any immediate attempts to track the guy. In the morning, however, it is easy to find the trail. The footprints of the Dione go a short distance into the woods on the other side of the trail and then disappear. However, the tracks of the men remain and are easy to follow. This whole encounter feels weird because, like, there's so many situations where you're just gonna get fucked. You just get fucked by fighting these, by getting thrown into a fight. Also, why is there a yakuza with them? What reason is there for a yakuza? Why are the yakuza, a bushi, and a kensei working together when they're not an adventuring party? What if you have dark vision? Joke's on you. That doesn't exist. Um, I don't think it exists. I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist. Um, and like, the only time it's like, it expects you to be cowardly and unadventurous, I guess, if you want to not fight. And even then, it's like, oh, you didn't fight them. Nothing happens. They run away. Uh, which on the one hand is fine, but on the other hand, it feels kind of like it's a waste of an adventure. You know, it kind of feels like it's a waste of an encounter. I'm one of those people where it's like, if you're going to fail a roll, it needs to be as interesting as if you would succeed on the roll. And this just feels like you failed on the roll, therefore nothing happens. Um, Midnight Meeting. This encounter occurs if the player characters meet the old man at the pre-arranged midnight meeting. His house is clean and modest in size. Standing in the shadows inside the doorway, he greets the player characters with a motion to be silent. Ushering them inside, he takes them to the main room, shooing out his aged wife and a young woman. A man, possibly a son, remains in the room with him. Ah, yes, this is important business the woman can't be present for. Welcome, most respected sirs. I am Myudo Ichiro. This is the husband of my daughter. Why are they talking like this? This is my daughter's husband. Like, this is the bullshit Orientalism writing that I hate. Like, and it's not just Gygax or Dave Cook that are guilty of it. I hated it in Yakuza 2. This idea that Asian people speak with broken English bugs me to no extent because it's so stupid. And yes, Asian people do speak. There are Asian people who speak with broken English. There are. I'm not going to say there aren't. I've met them. My uncle speaks with broken English. And it takes me like a little bit of time to really understand what he's trying to say. But the reason for that is because English is a complicated as fuck language with extra words that we don't really need. Like I remember the story about this guy who, was Russian and they kept making fun of him because he was like get in car. They're like, "Huh, do you mean get in the car?" He was like, "Perhaps your stupid English brain needs to be told get in the car. I don't need to be told get in the car because I know which car I'm getting into." And it's like it's presented as them being like, "Oh, hello, sir. Good to meet you, sir." That's what it feels like, and I can almost guarantee any DM who ran this gave this person that shitty accent because it reads with that accent. "This is the husband of my daughter. I am sorry you had to arrive at such a bad time. We are being punished for evils of our other lives. All the sutras we chant cannot save us from our sins. For what we may have done, the gods have sent a monster into our lands. 6 moons ago, just before the harvest time, it arrived and proclaimed itself the master of the Black Temple. Rent was demanded of us. At first we refused. We are not foolish or traitors. We know who our true lord is. But the monster has troops, and the Shugo's men have ignored our little village. If your lord is ignoring your village, and somebody else is demanding rent, you give them the rent. That's not traitorous. That's being smart. Not that Gygax would know, or Dave Cook for that matter. Once we refused, but only once. We are not warriors. For our refusal, the hot-headed sons of several families were slain, and their houses were fired. Their houses were burnt. Those are the burnt-out hulks you see outside. Like, this bullshit honor tongue is so irritating. Every moon his followers come and collect a monthly rent. Why every moon? I don't think people actually say that. Every day, every night. Like, this just makes it seem like, oh, I'm from the mystical East and I must speak in metaphors in order to show just how mystical and Eastern I am. I think this is the most upset I've gotten with this whole bullshit thing. Because, like, language, when you're translating it, there's no need to do this. Unless you're not fluent in the language, there's no need to be like, oh, I need to show how they're talking for the aesthetic. There's no need for that. There's actually no need for that. If you're going to translate somebody's words and you speak their language and your language fluently, you translate it properly into the proper parlance that the other person will understand. This shouldn't be like every moon his followers come and collect a monthly rent. Just say every night his followers come and collect rent. Already we have become unable to pay in rent. Again with the rice! This is so stupid. I'm getting angry. Because, all Asian people only care about rice. Last moon we were if your village deals in rice, fine, that's your rent. Your rent is going to be a part of your crop. If you don't deal in rice, they're not going to demand rice of you. Could they mean full moon or new moon? No. Literally every night is what they're trying to say. Because he says, "This time you have pleased me, on the next moon I will return." Like, that should just be tomorrow night I will return. Do they skip new moons? And if they mean every full moon or new moon, just say every month. In fact, I think that's actually what they mean. Every moon, his followers come and collect a monthly rent. Every month, his followers come to collect a monthly rent is the correct thing to say. It's unnecessary for them to do that, except for the fact that they're trying to be like mystical and Eastern, and being like, oh, we need to talk about the moon. Last moon, we were forced to pay with our best craftsmen and daughters, chosen by lot. Ah, yes. Last month, our rent was people. For this rent, in desperation, we set up a merchant and took his goods. It was a shameful act, but otherwise we would have to draw lots for our daughters again. This portrayal of savagery, where it's just like, if we can't pay in money, they'll take our people, is so annoying. It's bullshit. Is what it is. That's all it is. We are dust, nothing. We have shamed ourselves and our families. In a few days, I will leave this village and go to Tamanokuni. There, I will present myself to the court and plead mercy for my small village. They will kill me, I am sure. I will be executed from my village. Knowing this, I will go and die. What? Why would they kill him? I'm going to go there and ask for help. They will kill me for this. Is he going to the Black Temple? Like, if he... Is that where he's going? Is he going to the Black Temple? Because this is the first time that name has been said. Avenge the death of an old man. Avenge me for what they have done to my village. I am old, and I am already dead. I am a presumptuous old fool who offends his guests. I will die with some small honor. Like, why not just ask the people to go there? Why are you going there and being like, they will kill me, then I will need you to avenge me? Why not just be like, if you do not go, I will be forced to go there? Like, that would work. If you do not go there and deal with the Black Temple, I will be forced to go and they will surely kill me. His face pales as aspen bark. He wipes a trickle of tears from his cheek and bows forward, exposing his neck to the touch of the sword blade. Aye! Wails his son in sorrow and agony. The cry is echoed by the woman in the room beyond, their voices ending in choked and racking sobs. Wait, I I'm so confused by what just happened. What? Where did this sword blade come from? Is he Bowsford exposing his neck to the touch of the sword blade? Is he like having his son kill him? I don't understand what's going on. Did he kill himself? Did he just This is not only is this racist bullshit, this is also just bad writing. It doesn't explain what happened to him. It's just like exposing his neck to the touch of the sword blade. I could expose myself to the touch of a sword blade too. That's not going to do anything. There's no reason for anybody to cry because I've touched a blade. Unless it's like a rusty blade and I'm touching it now with my oily ass fingers and corroding the blade even more. Like, I would cry if I did that. This is... After following the trail of the Diony's men for 5... And what happens if you don't go there? Like... This is so stupid. You arrive at another small mura nestled at the base of the mountains. The village is a well of sorrow. The buildings are decrepit, the thatch rotten on some. Garbage is cast aside in small piles near side doors. Small children throw stones at each other, and young men in rags lounge in doorways. Bony dogs sprawl under shady trees. Monkeys clamber through the branches above them. No one seems happy or cheerful. So, we follow the Dione, get to another village, and it's just like garbage is cast aside in small pots. Why is there garbage cast aside, firstly? Like, this is the Edo period. What garbage is there? There's no, like, wrappers or anything. I'm pretty sure everything that would be compostable. Like, it wouldn't be in piles near side doors. I genuinely don't know what garbage they're talking about, except from like maybe like broken weapons or armor and stuff, or like broken items. And even then, like it wouldn't just be piled up somewhere. You'd find some way to dispose of that properly. Small children throw stones at each other, and young men in rags lounge in doorways. Is this to like just be like, look at how poor this village is? And they emphasize it more with the bony dogs under the shady trees. And the monkeys come from out of nowhere. No one seems happy or cheerful. Nobody. Not even the small children throwing stones at each other. As the characters enter town, they are greeted by a little man who introduces himself as Hoseki. Bobbing obsequiously to the characters, he tugs at their sleeves and tells them he has the most pleasant and wonderful accommodations for travelers. If questioned about the Daimyo or his men, Hoseki feigns fear and caution, pulling the player characters into a shadowy corner. He says the men passed through the village this morning and went up into the mountains. He attempts to learn what the player characters are doing in the town and what they intend to do next. If asked about the Daimyo, he goes into a horrible tale of what has become of the village. The story is much like what was told in the previous village. However, Hoseki freely embellishes the story with tales of dire magical powers, huge bands of men, and terrible events. Any information gained from him is generally overstated or misleading. As an agent of the Daimyo, his task is to learn as much as possible, while revealing as little as possible. Oh dare, he's a spy. Joy. Once finished with the story, he again presses the player characters to stay in his house. If they accept, go to a night at Hoseki's. If the characters refuse, he is greatly disappointed. No other builder in the moor offers them shelter. Unless they return to his house, they are forced to spend a night in the open air. In this case, to run the chill of the night encounter. This whole area is just to be like, the entire moor is inhospitable, except for this one person who's going to turn his back on you and stab you while you sleep, because he's a spy of the Oni. And there's no need for that. Like, especially if you're like a samurai or something, which there is like one of the pre-existing characters is a samurai. Um, and it genuinely feels like unnecessary flavor. It's like railroading in the worst way, because it's like, not only are we going to railroad you, we're going to railroad you and be racist about it. We're going to railroad you in such a way where you have to either stay in here or go outside because everybody is inhospitable or a turncoat. Pretty sure insight checks didn't exist at this time. I don't know what an AD&D character sheet looked like, but I'm pretty sure insight checks weren't a thing. Um, the good old days when insight checks didn't exist. What was wisdom around for then? Who knows? Who fucking knows? Um, that night, the player characters are given rooms in Oseki's household. His large minka is fairly barren. Gathering himself a simple comforter, he apologizes for the disarray. He is a widower and has little talent for housekeeping. With no children, he has a girl come in a few times a week to see to his needs. Tonight, he sleeps in the Kura storehouse, while the honorable strangers. That's not even. That's not even in quotes. The game is just like, the honorable strangers use this house, which we're going to write because that's what you are. You're the honorable strangers. After a simple dinner of a very small bowl of rice and pickled radishes, Hoseki lays out comforters and headblocks for everyone in the party. As he finished the dinner, he goes outside and brings back a basket of fruit and a jar of hot sake. He apologizes for his meager fare. With this, he says good night. If he's broke, why does he have rice? That shit isn't cheap. The player characters have told Hoseki what they're doing, asked about the Black Temple, inquired about other strangers, or shown an unnatural interest in temples of the area. The fruit and sake are drugged. Cool! Wait about 5 minutes of real time, and then require a save and throw versus poison for every character who ate or drank the drugged substances. If a character only had one drink or a few bites, he is allowed a +2 on the save and throw. For every additional drink or piece of fruit, the save and throw is reduced by -4. If the character fails to save, he falls into a deep sleep. Otherwise, aside from a mild case of indigestion, the character does not notice any effect. If all of the characters succumb to the drug, they wake the next morning with terrible headaches. Not only that, but all their personal possessions, including the clothes, are gone. Indeed, the only clothes on the mink are several women's robes. Ah, yes, because how do we humiliate the player characters? You make them dress like women. That's so humiliating. So much humiliate. Making them dress like women. This feels a like a gag. Much humiliate, such shame. It's dishonorable, is what it is. If some or all of the characters are not drugged but all are asleep, roll a percentile die. If there's an undrugged barbarian or ninja or yakuza with the party, add 10 to the die roll. If the result is 70 or less, the characters are robbed as described above. If the dice roll is greater, one or more of the undrugged player characters awaken during the robbery. Randomly determine which and how many characters awaken. Why not just say that they all wake up? Why not just say the undrugged characters wake up? Robbing them are 6 men dressed in black clothing and carrying weapons. Ah, yes, ninjas. When discovered, their first objective is to silence those awake before they can spread the alarm. They do not care how they accomplish this as long as they are silent. They are all ninjas and are well equipped with a number of weapons and devices. Secondly, they wish to finish the task they came here to do. Finally, they naturally wish to avoid unmasking. If the leader is unmasked, the player characters discover the whereabouts of their genial host, Hoseki. If the player characters keep a watch, the ninja attempts to dispatch the guard silently before commencing with the robbery. To accomplish this, Hoseki enters the Minka through the upper story. Moving silently, he attempts to backstab the guard from behind with his drug-coated ninjato. If successful, allow the player characters to roll a percentile die, as described above. This may result in one or more characters awakening. Drugged characters never awaken before dawn. So, if you're drugged, even if you get shaken awake, you will not awaken before dawn. So if it's just like 1 versus 8, if the ninjas lose Seki or half their party, the survivors attempt to run away by jumping through the open windows and into the darkness. If any ninja are captured, he steadfastly refuses to answer any questions. Why would the leader be unmasked? No. They're saying if the leader becomes unmasked. So if you can pull the leader's mask off. That's just bad wording. Um, yeah, that one I understood, but it's still like, why are the ninjas wearing masks in the first place? It's not how ninjas work. Um, like that's the funny thing about Naruto. For all of the issues with Naruto, which there are actually none, Naruto's a perfect anime. Um, that's how ninjas dressed, yo. They blended in with everybody. They didn't wear black and wear masks. You wouldn't know a ninja was. If a ninja wore black, you would see the ninja coming. They would be the worst assassins. They'd be like, "Hey, did you see that black shadow following us? Yeah, it's just some ninja. It's been trying to kill me for a week." It's like, oh, bummer, dude. It's like, yeah, I know. The ninja would dress like an average person and kill you that way. The funny story is about ninjas is like the reason white people think that they dress in black and all that stuff was because of theater ninjas, where the people would like dress in black on a theater stage to basically blend in with the shadows of the background to move people around. and I think there was one actual theater ninja that was also a ninja and assassinated somebody, and they were like, shit. And the white people ever since then were like, ah, yes, ninjas dressed in black and cover their faces. And it's not really just a stage illusion. Um, if any ninja is captured, he steadfastly refuses to answer any questions. Indeed, he goes to any extreme to avoid answering questions. So long as the player characters hold the ninja prisoner, they are the target of further ninja ambushes. These ambushes have the express purpose of killing the party members quickly. As such, the attacks are sudden and deadly. So the ninja actually just won't answer anything. If you capture a ninja, it will be the most useless thing ever. Because literally nothing will happen. You gain nothing. All that happens is more ninjas try to kill you. All of this is just like, there's literally no need for this. So we get Soseki, who's a Sohei ninja, and everybody else is a Bushi ninja. The player characters spend the night outdoors. They do not have any combat encounters. However, if the guards are watchful, they notice a figure moving in the shadows. Player characters moving in the shadows. Player characters able to move silently and hide in shadows are able to follow this figure. Other player characters are able to tell that the figure is stealthily slipping out of the mura. If the figure is successfully followed, he leads the characters a short way into the woods. At a particularly large willow tree, he takes a scroll from under the robes and tucks it into a large hole. With this, he turns and slips back into the village, returning to the house of Oseki. 10 minutes after the message is dropped out, another figure appears at the tree and disappears into the woods. Again, characters are able to move silently and hide in shadows can attempt to follow. The figure darts quickly to an old standing trunk. Rummaging a large stick from under the leaves, he beats the trunk in rhythmic strokes. It echoes like a reverberating drum. After several seconds, he pauses and waits, his head cocked. 30 seconds pass with no sound. He repeats the performance. This time, a faint, echoing thump flows through the forest. He tosses the stick aside and returns to the edge of the village. There he hides himself carefully. 30 minutes later, 4 men dressed in black robes join him, again with the ninjas. Another really interesting thing is we're on page 13 out of, let's see, how many pages does this adventure have? 13 out of 15. We haven't met a Daimyo. This adventure is called Swords of the Daimyo. We haven't met a single Daimyo. Like, unless you're white, in which case you get kidnapped by a Daimyo. And that's it. That's the extent of the Daimyo's appearance. Everything else, you're dealing with, like, peasants. Like, it could have been called Swords of the Dione. And that would have been, like, a lot more apt. 30 minutes later, 4 men dressed in black robes join him. After a few whispered words, one cups his hand to his mouth and imitates the hoot of the night owl. 3 times he hoots, then pauses and calls once more. In 10 minutes, the bushes rustle and a sixth figure joins the group. With a few abrupt hand signals, the group spreads out in a line and stealthily enters the village. The men are Hoseki and his Bushi ninja companions. They are searching for the player characters whom they intend to slay. They attempt to approach the player characters undetected. If this is not possible, they use their grenades to create confusion in the midst of the party and then attack from what they think is the least likely direction. They fight until half or more of the player characters are slain, half their numbers are fallen, or until Hoseki falls. The statistics appear at the end of the previous encounter. This is just the first one with extra steps. This is literally a Night at Hoseki's with extra steps. If the player characters were attacked and survived, they can attempt to follow the trail of attackers, provided someone was tracking. Also, like, if you don't get drugged, by Hoseki because he has no reason to suspect you, nothing happens. Fine. Um, oh, you get robbed either way. Okay. So you get robbed if you stay at Hoseki's place, but not killed. But if you sleep outside of the village, you get killed. What's the reason for that? There isn't any. There's no reason why you're getting killed, opposed from just getting robbed again. If the player characters were attacked and survived, they can attempt to follow the trail of their attackers, provided someone has the tracking skill. If successful, this trail leads to the Tengu discovered encounter. If unsuccessful, or if the characters are unable to follow a trail, they have to return to the Mura for more clues. Talking to the adult villagers gains the player characters nothing. It is painfully clear that no one wants to talk to them, that they are not even wanted here. The villagers are terrified of the Dione and his men and are fearful of retribution if they assist the player characters at all. However, the children of the Mura are not as oppressed as the elders. If any of the player characters has the presence of mind to talk to them, the characters gain information. The children describe a horrible monster who lives in the cleft of a cliff not far from the village. The ones that used to play there secretly, but the monster came and now they are afraid to go there. They can give the player characters precise directions to the cleft. So, does that take us to Tengu Discovered? Where does that take us? That doesn't tell us where we go next. It just says. They tell you where the cleft is. In fact, it may actually be easier to not track them because it's easier to just ask the children. Be like, where's the cleft? Oh, it's right this way. Striking off through the woods, the characters travel for 30 minutes and finally top a low rise. Ahead, they can see a cleft in a low cliff. Okay, so we do go to Tengu Discovered. As they move out, the sounds of battle reaches their ears. At the base of the cliff just ahead is a huge Oni fighting a group of 4 men. It has them cornered, and it seems fairly certain to win the fight. Upon seeing the party, the men begin to scream for help while the Oni bellows in rage. If the characters attack, the Oni continues to attack the 4 men during the first 2 rounds of combat. After this, it attacks whichever character seems to present the greatest danger. If given a chance, the men try to flee because, even though they had the courage to fight the Oni, now that there are more people here, the men will just run away. Because they're cowards. The men are members of the gang that has been terrorizing the neighboring Mura. Through clever deceptions, they have convinced everyone that the gang is led by a dangerous and fearsome Oni. This is not the case. The Oni intends to kill the men in revenge for their vile trickery. Okay, that's actually kind of interesting. They create this legend of an Oni. And the men who we would be fighting now are the bandits from the Black Temple, who've been doing this. And now the Oni is like, no, I'm gonna kill you for doing this shit. It is not that the Oni minds being viewed as a terror of the countryside, it's just that it does not want the blame for these things. Now men are hunting because of the evil it has not done. So my issue with this is that, like, it genuinely doesn't give the player characters a reason to do anything. It's kind of like, so in Urban Chat, in Monster of the Week, one of the mechanics is the clock. They say if the players do not do anything, what happens? What happens immediately? What happens in the near future? What happens in the far future? What happens at the end? What does this monster do? If we present that through Swords of the Daimyo, we're given this adventure where the clock is the Dione, is this group of bandits. Immediately, they terrorize the Muras. Fine. Cool. But then after that, they get caught by the Oni who kills them for it, and now you don't have any reason to deal with them anymore. You could just watch that and be like, oh, those are the people we fought. Now they're dead. Well, we're done. It doesn't give the players any reason to do anything. It's now it's a lesson in futility because it's like everything you've done to this point is completely useless. There's no point in any of the investigating you've done or the fights you've done because guess what? The gang was going to die anyway. And not long term, as in we all die eventually. They were going to die like by the time you find them. When the player characters arrive, the men begin to scream and shout that the Dione is attacking them. The Dione, in turn, also begins to shout at its side of the story. Shout its side of the story. If the men escape through the aid of the player characters, the Oni still attempts to make peace with the player characters. If this is impossible, it flies into a fury and attacks relentlessly, fighting to the death. If the Oni makes peace with the player characters, it explains the complete situation to them. Should the player characters reveal they intend to destroy the Dione and his men, the Oni volunteers to accompany them. It is bent on vengeance and is willing to work with humans and others if that will help. It is quite rash, however, not given to subtlety. Upon reaching the enemy camp, its only desire is to attack the false Dione. It becomes quite uncontrollable at this point. If the player characters slay the Oni and the men are still around, they look at each other in quick panic. Then the cleverest of the group suddenly falls to his knees in false gratitude. O honorable and valiant warriors, it is a great deed you have done. You have slain the Dione and freed the land from his evil grip. The others hastily follow suit, heaping praises upon the player characters. They do everything they can to convince the player characters that the mission has been accomplished. Surely now the Oni's evil followers will be forced to flee. They want to take the player characters back to the Mora to announce the great deed and honor them. If the player characters insist on pushing forward into the cleft, the men ask if they can go along to help. If the characters refuse, the men leave the party and then trail behind to join in the ambush into which the player characters are sure to stumble. One of the men is a Yakuza. He and the Yakuza encountered in the forest Mura are both members of the same Kumi. Hidden on his upper arms are tattoos identical to those worn by the other Yakuza. If any character is particularly observant during the fight, he sees these tattoos because nobody has sleeves for some reason. If the player characters have seen the tattoo on the other Yakuza, they know the designs are identical. What conclusions are drawn from this is up to the players. That's actually kind of interesting. My issue with this section, though, my issue is the same thing with what I was saying earlier about who are we fighting? We meet an Oni, and it's presented as violent and brash, and it wants to kill these people. Fine. But then we're expected to help the Oni, because the Oni is secretly the good guy, despite everything we've been told up until this point. That it's actually the people who are bad guys. Now, if you're running this with the Asian characters, again, the people who are running this game are probably white. I'm not saying there weren't Asian people who ran this game, or Asian people who played this game. But what it's doing is it's saying that Asians are manipulative, they're deceptive, they resort to cheap tricks by using the image of the Oni against the other people, and they deserve to die for their tricks. And this kind of goes back to the snake oil salesman kind of situation. That's the vibe I'm getting, personally. That it kind of circles back to the snake oil salesman, where you have these actual Asian medicine men who sell snake oil. And the way snake oil works was they would boil a snake in water and give it to them. But they would use specific kinds of snakes that actually had like medicinal benefits and all of that stuff when boiled in the water to create the oil. And white people saw that and they were like, we can also do this. And they boiled the snakes and fat and like cow fat and all that stuff to create this similar looking oil that actually had no medicinal benefits because it was just animal fat. Which is how we get snake oil salesmen now, as somebody who sells you animal fat and calls it under the guise of medicine. Whereas like the original snake oil salesmen were actually selling medicine, they get a bad rap because of the white people who are doing this. But this kind of gives me like that snake oil salesman feeling, where it's like, yes, they were actually snake oil salesmen all along. They were doing this for their own selfish gains, and now they must suffer the consequences. The cleft the characters must travel down is the narrow rocky gorge. At the far end of the cleft is a small valley, nestled into the rocky walls. At the far side is a modest-sized temple. As the player characters study this scene, roll for surprise, subtracting 1 from the die roll. While the group stands at the bottom of the cleft, 4 Bushi armed to the Daikyo attack. They are stationed at the top of the cleft. From their vantage point, they rain down arrows on the player characters, hoping to kill or pin them down. So, there's something I want to see. There's something I want to see because this kind of feels on the this is right on the tail of the Vietnam War. The people writing this were around for the Vietnam War. They were familiar with guerrilla combat. That's what this feels like. This feels like a jab at guerrilla combat, at dishonorable fighting. And I'm saying dishonorable in quotes because that's how white people saw it. Asians saw it as surviving. Whereas, like, the Asians were like, it's an ambush. They fought dishonorably. We shouldn't fight these people because they fight dishonorably. And they cheat. But that's what this kind of feels like. They are stationed at the top of the cleft. From their vantage point, blah blah blah. Since the men are stationed on both sides of the cleft, it is impossible for player characters to find total cover. At best, the PCs can get 100% cover from 2 attackers and 25% cover from the remaining 2. The Bushi, in turn, have 25% cover from all missile attacks by the player characters. Wait, so they can't, like, hide under anything? There aren't any, like, bushes or anything they can hide under? The cliffs either side of the player characters are 50 feet high and can only be scaled with ropes or by those with the climbing skill. During the climber is exposed in full view of the Bushi on the opposite side and has no dexterity adjustments to armor class. Likewise, climbing characters are not able to use shields. The characters are attacked at the point where the cleft opens into the valley. 100 yards from their position is the entrance to the temple. However, the guard between them is open and bare. If the NPCs from the previous encounter are following the player characters, they join the Bushi in the attack. The Bushi recognize the men and do not fire upon them. These men attempt to gang up on some characters while the bowmen keep the rest of the party pinned down. 2 rounds after the ambush begins, the occupants of the temple are aware that intruders are in the valley. They begin to organize a defense. On the 5th round of the fight, the first of the reinforcements arrive, as referees should decide how many reinforcements are needed and in what order they arrive. The Tengu never becomes involved in this battle. Wait, what Tengu? The Oni? Are they talking about the Oni? What Tengu did we meet? Like, a Tengu and an Oni are 2 very different things. They even call it an Oni. For this encounter, use the monastery temple map in this book. If the player characters manage to quickly silence the Bushi guards from the previous encounter, all the NPCs in this encounter... Is there a Tengu in the next section? Okay, the Tengu is in the next section. So it's not... But this doesn't even tell us what happens if the Oni fights. Does the Oni join in the fight? Do we get an advantage from the Oni helping us? What's going on? What's happening? Anyway. I really don't like this ambush section. I think there are ways to do ambush correctly, but this kind of portrays it as like you're fighting against people who play dirty and will rain arrows down on you. And you have to deal with all of these things on your own. They turned it into an onigiri. Oh, that would be the dream. Oh, I wish it was an onigiri. But also, hi Lemmy. This whole fight scene just reads as like a jab at guerrilla warfare. It feels like Dave Cook was trying to replicate what happened in like Vietnam, um, where the players get ambushed. They have no means of fighting back. There's a severe disadvantage, and the bandits are bad for doing this instead of just smart. For this encounter, use the monastery temple map in this book. If the player characters manage to quickly silence the Bushi guards from the previous encounter, all the NPCs in this encounter are attending a convocation in the back. Wait, so not only do they get the advantage on us, there's a chance that one of them isn't going to send a scout immediately. Like, that's what I would do. If I'm aware that players are going to, that the players are ambushing, if these outsiders are coming into my ambush, why would we not be like, we should tell them that they're coming? If the player characters have caused an alarm, they encounter several different groups within the temple. Use the sections below at best to match the situation. Okay. As the characters enter the temple, they see the halls are empty. The building is old and somewhat run down. However, there are clear signs that someone or something is living here. They do not seem to be overly neat. From the distance come the faint sounds of voices. In the meditation hall, because every temple has a meditation hall, even the bandits, are all the NPCs listed in this encounter: the humanoid Tengu, 10 Sohei, and 2 Yakuza. In addition, if the Wujen ninja of the first encounter or Hoseki have survived, they are also here. By the time the player characters reach the meditation hall, they know people are present here. Even bandits need their morning meditation. I mean, fair. But it's weird that they're like, everybody's in the meditation hall if you don't get caught. By the time the player characters reach the meditation hall, they know people are present there. The sounds of voices chanting make this perfectly clear. Why are they chanting? It's just like, yes, the only way these people meditate is by chanting. I love donuts. Jelly-filled are my favorite. Peering into the hall, they see a man dressed in black and orange robes standing in front of the broken statue of a goddess. He is looking over a group of hooded men. The man before the statue is actually a humanoid Tengu polymorphed into human form. He is the leader of the Black Temple and the organizer of the Sohei Raiders. If the characters watch the ceremony, they can tell it is a quasi-religious service. In part, the Tengu intones chants to the deities of the Black Temple. After a little of this, however, the Tengu starts into a sermon for his faithful. In it, he attempts to rouse them to fanatical action against a group of strangers who are threatening the very survival of the temple. He describes the horrible punishments these strangers will receive for their impiety. He then details a plan to increase the temple's power and lay claim to the local shogun. So, this is like a bad cult. And not only is it a bad cult, it's like it's one of those things like Daniel mentioned it. It keeps going back up and again, where it's like, if this were in Faerun, while bad, it's worse in this setting. Um, and it's like, oh yes, the Tengu wants to just rile people up into anger, which it doesn't fit my understanding of what Tengu do very well. I just want to double check that before I say that. But like, I don't remember Tengu being like, yes, we need to destroy everybody. Um, yes, they were disruptive demons and harbingers of war, but they weren't really like cultists who riled people up to destroy everybody. Um, I mean, there were Tengu who did that, I guess, but it feels weird coming from this. Characters who listen to this realize that the Dione is nothing but a hoax. We already know the Dione is a hoax. We met them we met the Oni 3 encounters ago. We met the Oni here in this encounter, in Tengu Discovered. And we either slay the Oni or we fought with it. It is clear that it was nothing but trickery on the part of the Tengu. A clever costume, stilts, and proper staging were all it took to convince the local peasants. Because they're so dumb. Haha. All it takes to convince the local peasants is a clever costume and stilts and staging. Now for the next part of the plan, the Tengu explains that the Daioni must be replaced by something more believable and useful. Than an Oni? With these words, he concludes the sermon and the meeting begins to break up. If the player characters are hidden somewhere near the exits, there is a 50% chance they are noticed by one of the followers. As soon as he sees the PCs, he shouts a warning to all others, and they attack en masse. In this situation, the congregation cannot be surprised. However, if the player characters attack the congregation before the sermon is over, they surprise the followers in a 1 to 3. The Oni is present with the player characters. It immediately attacks upon spotting the robed men, not waiting to listen to anything. During the fight, the Tengu attempts to duck behind the statue and revert to his true form. He then flies to the top of the hall and attacks with his spells. If the fight goes badly, he flees. That part's kind of fine. Like, it's weird how when we get into a fight, I'm like, yeah, okay, this is fine. But I really don't like this issue where it's like, yes, it's a Tengu, and everybody is aware that it's a Tengu, but we're going to follow it anyway because cult. And it kind of feels like a jab at Shintoism. Because it's like, you're in this temple, you're doing your worship, and suddenly this Tengu is riling people up to do a fight when there's not really any reason for them to want to be part of this fight aside from cult. And it just feels like it feels like a white person being like, yeah, see, they're savages. They're dumb savages who are doing this for dumb religious reasons, which is weird given paladins exist. It's weird how in Faerun they're like, paladins and clerics can get away with this, but not the Japanese bandits. Who are notably mostly Sohei. Sohei or ninja or yakuza. Because those are the three things that would exist in this cult. If the alarm has been raised by the Bushi guards, the followers in the temple take a position in several places attempting to ambush the player characters as they poke around. Again, this idea of like the ambush being a bad thing for them to be doing. Main gate and the guard room to the side of the gate are 3 Sohei armed with Naginata. I mean, that's a pretty good weapon to have. At the same time, there are 2 more in the outer courtyard, standing at the entrance to the main hall. They have daikyu and stand-in arrows. Their task is to pin the characters in the gateway, while the other Sohei strike from the flanks. If the player characters attempt to pass through this hall, the 2 Yakuza hear them coming and take up positions behind the various statues in the hall. When the player characters reach the center of the room, the Yakuza attack. One of them carries a Biwa of Calm, one of those fun magic items we saw in Oriental Adventures. And a spare +1, +2 versus smaller than man-sized. He is stationed behind a group of statues towards the center of the room. As the characters approach, he attempts to calm them with his music. Meanwhile, his partner, armed with a +1 short bow of distance, takes advantage of their hesitation to rush out and gently disarm the characters. He is prepared for the music by stuffing wax in his ears. He is able to disarm up to 2 calmed characters per round. Once this is done, he and his partner attack. Of course, if they are attacked first, they fight back. The player characters bypass the main hall. The two Yakuza happily take advantage of this to escape. Because cowards. Again. This idea that, like, if they're not fighting, they're running away is stupid. Like, why not just set up the ambush later? Why not just do a sneak attack behind them? If they bypass the hall, why are you just running away? Especially if you're prepared for a fight. In this hall, in the meditation hall, are the remaining characters, 5 Sohei and the Tengu. The Sohei fight with fanatical fury. Ooh, that's a fun phrase. And I am using fun in quotes. Fanatical fury. While the Tengu, as described above. Searching the temple, the characters find nothing of value in the front half of the structure. However, scattered throughout the monk cells are many personal belongings, obviously the property of the Sohei and others who operated out of the temple. Going through all these goods takes some time, and all the player characters can spend up to 10 hours searching before they find everything. Each hour spent searching, going through chests, pulling up mats, etc., gains the players 500 fen and 50 tael. Imprisoned in a number of the monk cells are 5 men and 8 women. The men are burning for vengeance against their oppressors. The women are horrified with shame and want nothing more to do with the world. That implies like one thing, and I hate it. In addition to these items, there is a beautifully done sutra scroll in the library worth 500 tael to the Konjo Temple. However, only characters with religious proficiencies are able to identify the true value of this scroll, because, they would lie about it, and also it's not value in just returning it as is. There are 2 other scrolls, one telling the history of this temple and the other telling the activities and plans of the Tengu. Reading this, it becomes apparent that the Tengu undertook this scheme because he thought the whole idea was some kind of grand cosmic joke. Apparently, he really had no burning desire to rule. He only thought the whole thing was a cruelly humorous trick to play on the humans. So we go from the Tengu being a harbinger of war, from being this, like, I want to unleash chaos and destroy these things to rule over them, to, what would be really funny? And, like, it goes into this idea of being tricksters once again, which isn't bad. Like, I'm not offended by that on its own, but in the larger scheme of things, it's problematic. Because, like, the Tengu isn't just some demon. It's not just some yokai that wants to just be chaotic and all that stuff. Like, it is a yokai, but it's one of the more protective ones. At least it became one of the more protective ones. And this one's more just like, I'm gonna fuck shit up because LOL. One of the cells is particularly interesting. It contains the costume of a giant, horrible creature, the Dione, a pair of stilts, 3 flash powder grenades, 3 sets of ninja garb, and a ninjato. Also hidden in the floor of this room is a set of spell scrolls, such as a Wujen would use. Not spell. I guess spell scrolls is in D&D as well, so that's fine. The book contains the following spells: No History, Accuracy, Elemental Burst, Hail of Stone, Enchanted Blade, Apparition, and Rope Trick. Player characters find the weapons lost by the merchants on the bodies of the various Sohei. So, that's it. That's the whole adventure. This art is disgusting. Especially because, like, it doesn't fit anywhere, I don't think. Like, is this intended to be the Oni? I don't know what this is. We never encountered these things in the entire adventure. Like, those weren't around. Why are these people naked? And that's apparently the end of the module. Like, that's it. That's where it ends. If you here's the loot that you find. There's no like when you return to the village, you get this. When you return these things, you get this. Uh, you defeat the Tenku and everybody runs away. No, it's just like it feels lazy and kind of tired. Um, I kind of want to see how they describe the Tengu in this at least, because if the Tengu is designed to be um, like a trickster spirit in this, then that's one thing. But what we're told of the Tengu, the humanoid Tengu, okay. The Tengu are a race of bird-like humanoid creatures found in uninhabited mountain areas, though not far from settled lands. Many people believe they were original inhabitants of the land before the arrival of humans. Once the humans arrived with their organization and culture, the Tengu were pushed deeper and deeper into the mountains. There they dwell now in forest glades, meadows, and on the banks of streams and ponds. They are somewhat solitary creatures that do not form villages or permanent communities. There are two types of Tengu, the crow-headed Tengu and the humanoid Tengu. The crow-headed Tengu is a humanoid, 2 to 3 feet tall with the head and beak of a crow. Feathered wings sprout from between their shoulder blades. They are evil and malicious, seeking to cause harm to all humans who stray into their territory. They fight with katana and wakizashi. They can speak the language of Tengu, that of animals, and the human language of the area. They are able to perfectly mimic voices of those they have heard. They are able to use polymorph self and shout bells 3 times per day. They have lower status than the humanoid Tengu and follow orders from these creatures in deference to their rank. Humanoid Tengu stand from 3 to 4 feet tall. They have normal humanoid faces except that their skin is red or blue and their noses are exceptionally long. They may or may not have stunted feathered wings on their backs, growing between their shoulder blades. Humanoid Tengu are able to use polymorph, blah 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 blah. They have that. In general, all Tengu are extremely secretive and capricious. Little is known about their way of life. They are all quite fond of strong drink and can be bribed, appeased, or befriended with large offerings of sake. They also have a taste for music, particularly that of the drum and flute. So they don't even match up with their own Tengu. Like, ignoring actual mythology, sticking to what we know of their Tengu, it doesn't even fit this. It's it's a boring motivation for a villain to just be like, I'm going to do this to fuck shit up because it's funny. It's yeah, exactly. It's not interesting. If they wanted to stick to the Tengu being a harbinger of war, that's one thing. If they wanted to be like the Tengu wants to take revenge for being pushed out of its home, that's that's actually kind of interesting. That would be really cool. But instead, they're just like the Tengu wants this wants to do all this to be for the fun of it. It's doing this because it's funny. And he goes back to what I was saying on Daniel's show about there being only like two things that Asian characters get to do in Western media. And it's either they're badass martial artists, a la Bruce Lee, or they're kind of the comic relief, a la Jackie Chan. And on their own, like, that's fine. I love Bruce Lee and I love Jackie Chan. Amazing actors, and I love their movies. But when that's all that they can be, it's a problem. And that's exactly what they've done here. Everybody in this is either every single NPC we've met to this point either wants nothing to do with us because we're outsiders to the village, even if we're playing an Oriental Adventures character. Um, they're a turncoat who wants to stab us in the back, or this Tengu who's doing this for the fun of it, who's doing this because LOL chaos, which is it's lazy. It's extremely lazy. They don't really give anybody a difference in character. We have three characters that exist through this entire thing, and we meet a lot of NPCs, and the ones who aren't named are just portrayed as like cowardly or weak and or just outright dumb. Uh, which goes back to this idea that if you're playing your character from the normal AD&D game, if you're bringing one from Faerun into Oriental Adventures, if you're bringing one from Faerun to Karator, to Kazakura, you're now placing your white characters in a position where they're naturally going to be better than everybody else because they're smarter than everybody else. They, uh, they didn't see through these things. They saw through the traps. They didn't fall for everything. They went on to save everybody. It plays into the white savior problem immediately. And if you're not playing one of those, if you're playing one of the PCs, designed for Oriental Adventures, it's still a bit of an issue because like you're going to struggle against it because you're 3 levels behind the white adventurers. Um, you're going to get snuck up on, and and yes, you are still smarter than everybody else, but then you run into the issue of being one of the good ones. It's not it's not like you fit in with everybody else. You're still better than them. You're still smarter than them. You're still more aware of what's going on, which is which is the same with like Drist in in Forgotten Realms, where you're like, oh, you're one of the good ones. You're one of the smart adventure. You're one of the smart people from Oriental Adventures. You didn't fall for this. You're too smart for that. And like I said, when you're a white person running the game or a white person playing in this game, you are still you're still positioning yourselves above them because it's like this is the world you're portraying to the white players. And even if you're playing with an all Asian party, and you're an Asian GM and you're doing this, it doesn't really change the fact that this is going to be what white people deal with, uh, without that extra context to be like, okay. And even on its own, like, uh, I am Asian diaspora. I'm like 4th generation. Um, my grandparents are who came from China, and if this were my first experience, if I were a 13 or 15-year-old playing this with no other experience of China, no other knowledge of Chinese culture, I could fall into the trap of thinking that's what it's like. I could fall into the trap of thinking that like, oh, the smart Chinese people are the exception. They're the ones who are able to see past these things, which is a huge issue. Um, then we have like a timeline of Kozakuro. Um, there are several semi-mythical eras before the written timeline of Kozakura began. The first of these 3 of those eras, called the Age of Gods, began with the creation of Shinkoku and the settlement of Kozakura. Legend maintains that this era lasted over 10,000 years. Next came the reign of the Earth Spirit Emperors. These demigods are supposedly received their titles from the heavenly deities. Many colorful legends of Kozakura come from this time: the War of the Oni Kings, the Stone-Bearing Empress, and the deeds of Nakanomoria. Uh, the tales of this time combine fiction and fact, embellishing and exaggerating known events. Those of later ages called the rulers of this age emperors, in an attempt to legitimize their own imperial line. Only after those 2 ages did the rise of the human emperors occur. In the following timeline, the names of emperors and empresses listed in capital letters next to the dates when they ascended to the throne. The Kozakuran calendar groups years into cycles rather than centuries. Each cycle is 60 years long. The calendar begins with the ascension of Mori, the first human emperor, to the throne. The year in which an event occurred is given in terms of the cycle preceding the slash. Following the year of the cycle, following the slash, and the cumulative number of years since year 1 in parentheses. That's such an unnecessarily complicated way of doing things. Like, there is no reason for it to be this complicated. Aside from being like, the way they do it is different from how we do it. So we need to call attention to that. This is a lot of things. I also find it really weird. Here's what I find really weird. History stops at 1430, the beginning of the PC's campaign. So we have these like 10,000 years that have just been shrouded in mist. This is one of those things where it's like America doesn't understand how old human history is. According to the timeline of Kozakura, we started year 1. The PC's adventures, the beginning of the PC's campaign, is 1430. I imagine that's to just be like, this is what time period we're in for the Forgotten Realms. To be like, is to be synonymous with the 1400s in our time. But, like, Asian history dates way past that. And fine, some of it is prehistory. Sure. But it's not semi-mythical lore that nobody knows anymore. Bits of it are apocryphal, like reading Confucius or Sun Tzu or Lao Tzu. There are issues where we're like, okay, so Sun Tzu talked about this period of history, so it must have existed, and we're able to work backwards from there to find out uh, what's going on. So yes, there are prehistorical areas, but don't be like the human era. The human history began here and is only 1400 years old. 1400 years is nothing. It's it's genuinely nothing, and a lot of it is just like, I'm actually curious how many in 1400 years we have year 1. Never mind the Shang Dynasty, which is the earliest time period of China we have firm existence. Exactly. Don't worry about it. So, I'm kind of curious. 1600 BC? What's that? Don't be silly, Adam. Don't you know history started with year 1? Um, so we have Mori. 78 years later, we have Itonin. Um, who apparently lasted for a pretty long time. 112 Daigen, 150 Tensho, and then like nothing happened for 150 years. You're gonna tell me nothing worthwhile happened for 150 years, aside from the fact that there were 3 new emperors. Um, then we have 90 years before the next one. I'm loving how there's no political conflict going on. 400 years in, there's no political conflict where the the Dark Ages, man, exactly. Um, there's no political conflict where the emperor gets overthrown for 400 years so far. Korobokuro Hero shows up. All of a sudden, we have a prime minister. Why do we have a prime minister in this world? Do they know prime ministers didn't come out of nowhere? Like, when did we get ministers anyway? When did democracy show up? Pretty sure the shogunate just was at this point in time. Um, Then we have 70 years before the next emperor. The Way of Enlightenment is introduced to Kozukura. No. No, 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 because under the guidance of Prince Sanetomo, the Prime Minister, Emperor Sentai. Wait, so the Emperor is the Prime Minister? What? This doesn't make any sense. This is stupid. The Emperor and the Prime Minister are two different people. You vote for a Prime Minister, you don't vote for an Emperor. But this itself is actually pretty problematic. Under the guidance of Prince Sanetomo, the Prime Minister, Emperor Sentai, begins the Great Land Reforms. Much property is redistributed, and the status of Korobokuro and Hengi is formally defined as outside the Kozukuran government. That's basically saying, like, the First Nation people are outside of the Mounties. It's like the Vatican and elected monarchy. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I really don't like how it's like the Way of Enlightenment is introduced to Kozukura. Because that kind of, like. So, Japan's history with religion is really interesting. Because there was Shintoism. And then Buddhism got introduced. And there was a bit of a conflict between Shintoism and Buddhism. And that's kind of what this sounds like. The Way of Enlightenment, I guess, is supposed to be Buddhism. Um, even though the Way of Enlightenment should be Taoism, which I don't think reached Japan for a very long time afterwards. But it's like the Way of Enlightenment is introduced into Kozukura. And then in 503, we have Empress Jume. So notable that they had to put Empress next to her name. We don't get Emperor next to Sentai, but we get Empress next to Jume. You know, you have to make sure that you point out who the other is. Yeah, the relationship between Japan and China is really interesting at this point in time. But this is like sloppily done of it. She lasted for 60 years before getting given over to Sano. Black Castle appears. Black Castle is destroyed. So a castle appeared for like 40 years, not even 40 years, for 32 years, and then is just destroyed. A village is founded as the provincial capital of Miyama. We get a new emperor in 631, which is 70 years. I love how all these emperors live for like ruled for close to 100 years. There's no like this is the closest one I've seen. A 22-year gap between Tokami and Kodaiku. Oh, I guess there was this one. There was a 35 between Tensho and Okuri. Yeah, nice round numbers. But this one was like 103 years. My favorite thing is like there's 103 years between the rule of Okuri and the rule of Koshu, which means Okuri must have lived for over 100 years before handing it over to Koshu because like they weren't going to give it to Okuri out the womb. Another empress. So we've had two empresses so far in 700 years. The Sakura insurrection. So rebellion. During this time, three emperors are proclaimed by the rebels: Sagi, Gosagi, and Oizu. Is it supposed to be like pre-Edo, like right before the Edo period starts? The Kanchai school of the Way of Enlightenment is founded. Okay. Suffering from the political and financial strain of the Sakura insurrection, Empress Kodaiku is compelled to name Honda no Okumi as regent for her young son Pidamu. Wait. So why do we get new emperors here, but we still have an empress? This doesn't make sense. Do different areas have emperors in this one country? This this makes no sense. Um, in 713, so after 60 so years, she gives over to her son. The last stronghold of the Sakura insurrection is captured. The war is officially ended, and the rebel court is destroyed. And then Sure takes over after 125 years. Maybe she's a dowager empress. I mean, maybe, but it's not really. That's not really how Japan worked. Um, and Sure hasn't isn't one of these people either. It genuinely it comes out of nowhere. I don't know who this Sure person is. And it's like the war is officially ended and the rebel court is destroyed. So there was no point in it. The Contra school is but like 713 to 838, Bidamu ruled. That's 125 years. How old is this kid? Or how old was this kid? Um, the Contra school is introduced to Kazakura. Ichiro the swordsman fights his first duel at the age of 10. In the next 83 years, he becomes the foremost swordsman of Kozakura. Legend maintains he was the finest swordsman who ever lived or ever will live. Yeah, what are these people eating? Um, living the life of a wastrel and vagabond, he is never beaten in a duel. Shortly before his death, it is said he achieved the ultimate goal, making the perfect weapon, infusing it with the very essence of his life. It is the breath-floating sword. The weapon has never been found. Ah, yes. Ah, yes. The breath-floating sword. Uh, sorry. But then between like 838 and 916, nothing really happens. A school is all of this. We're in the year 1000 now. We've reached 969. Nice. Uh, we've reached the year 969, and there has been one moment of political uprising. One single moment of political uprising in nearly 1,000 years. I've been around for 25 years, and I have seen like 30 political uprisings in those 25 years that I can remember. Not successful ones, mind you. Not all of them have been successful, but there were more than one notable ones. 1,000 years in one country, and there's been one political uprising. An invasion fleet from Wa, commanded by the Hideguri Ieyasu lands on the southwestern tip of Shinkoku, conquered 7 provincial provinces. The shogunate organizes a counterattack, but the effort is hampered by the detection of several powerful southern lords. After the initial battle, both sides are unable to make further progress. So all of this is just like a history of war, which is fine, but like personally, more stuff should have happened at this point. Um, and they keep talking about like failed things. Um, Raiding along the borders of the occupied provinces becomes a common practice in the Kozakuran families in the area. So far, all I've gotten is this is a savage land that is somehow peaceful, yet everybody is a savage who just raids all the time. But there's no real war because everything is peaceful. Hideguri Ieyasu attempts to break the deadlock in the Southern War by invading the Dai Plain from the sea. The Regent, there is no war in Ba Sing Se. There's no war in Kazakura. Nope, no war in Kazakura. But there's actually no war. This is the second war we've seen in 1,000 years. Um, the Regent Honda no Mototsune launches a force onto the inland sea. In the midst of a fierce storm raised by the Mototsune sorcerers, the two armies meet. For 2 days, a fierce hand-to-hand battle rages across the decks of over 300 ships. This is like the stupidest thing to put in a history book. Like, I never studied history past high school, but we never read about like a one-on-one fight because that's useless. You would never do a one-on-one fight. Um, Worse, it's like they have ships, they have weapons, but they do a hand-to-hand battle over 300 ships. This sounds like apocryphal. That something apocryphal that's made it into a history book for no reason. Um, with Ieyagusa dead and his army broken, Mototsune begins the recapture of the occupied southern part. So twice now there's been a war and the rebels have failed. The people who incite the war because of political unrest have now failed. The Great Hunt begins in the southern provinces as the survivors of Ieyagusa's naval expedition return to their conquered territories. Fell creatures and oppressed peasants exact a horrible revenge on the stragglers. Now they're literally just being like, the peasants are savages. He outright says it. Mototsune savagely destroys these rebellious Hyakusho, leaving a wave of devastation behind him. Hondo Mototsune completes the reconquest of the southern provinces. Durumji Monastery built, Konjo Monastery built, a new emperor, new empress, new emperor. After 4 years. Why did it last only 4 years? We don't know. It just did. If an empress lasted, yeah, so we have between 1056 and 1068, we have three different people in charge, but we don't get told why. That's what I'm interested in. Tell me what happened between 1062 and 1068, why the empress got overthrown and got replaced by Murakaku. Like, give me that political intrigue. Even if it's like, Soyaku got assassinated. What has caused the change? Prompted by the weakness of the imperial court, the Hojo family precipitates. Yeah, give me that court politics. Don't give me these failed invasion attempts that don't impact anything. Prompted by the weakness of the imperial court, the Hojo family precipitates the Tennu War. The country splits between supporters of the emperor under the control of the Honda family and the Hojo cause. Hojo forces win the Battle of Kurosumi. Yaku conquered Miyama during the campaign in the province. A great fire sweeps through Kuda. Nemo Ozuchi sacrifices his life to save the family charters. The Emperor Seigo is assassinated. So finally we get told what happened to one of the emperors. In 1110, we have Seigo, Emperor Seigo, gets put in charge. 1112, he gets assassinated. 1113, Shoaji. Emperor Shoaji comes in. Under the authority of the puppet Emperor Shoaji. See, like, now we're finally getting into, like, the history that we should be getting. What is actually happening that's impacting people? Not what's happened that has no impact whatsoever. The Hojo family assumes the title Shogun. Although fighting continues off and on for many years, the Tenyu War is considered to have ended. The power of the Honda family is broken. Most of its members are exiled or executed. The few that remain have their power carefully restricted. So that's actually really cool to know because, like, for 1,019 years, the Honda family was in charge. We've known about the Honda family from like the beginning. Um, like since 700. Since the year 700, the Honda family has been. Since 400, the Honda family has been in power. What's up, General Googleos? We get told that the Honda family is in power, and finally, after 1,000 years, they've been replaced with a new family, the Hojo family. That's actual history that's impactful. The Bukafu is officially declared at Gifu. Most of the lords of Kozakura come to present themselves to the Hojo shogun. Those who do not come are considered enemies of the shogunate. That is not how that works. Creating a Pathfinder First Edition character, nice. Um, like, there's no reason to consider them enemies of the shogunate. They could just have been busy. Um, New emperor, new empress after 5 years. Doesn't explain why. Um, with the arrival of his first shogo, the provincial capital of Miyama is moved from Kuda to Tamanokuni. Uh, After the next year, there's a new emperor. Doesn't explain why. 11 years, new emperor. So, in the first 1,000 years of Kazakura, there's like relative peace. There's 2 wars. Nothing really happens. We go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You go through 15 emperors. There are 15 emperors in the first 1,000 years. And then in the next, like, 200 years, you go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You've doubled the number of emperors between the first 1,000 years and the next 200 years. And they don't explain why. They don't explain how this happened. They don't explain, well, here's what happened. It just, like, implies there's political issue, but doesn't delve into it. So we don't know what happened. All provinces are now directly or indirectly under Hojo command. The country is unified under a shogun. The Bujenshu Teizao and Goburo the Lame engage in a murderous duel of sorcery. So great are their powers that one stands atop Mount Kaza and the other on the neighboring peak of Dogorayama. For an entire night, the sky in the area is changed to a horrid violet green. The villages, fields, and forests between the two are burned to cinders. The 237-year-old feud apparently ends with the climatic explosion of the peak of Mount Kaza. The site is now called Brogan Dish Mountain, for the shape of the remaining mount. No bodies are found, so it's difficult to say if the feud has ended or is postponed. Again, this, like, I don't see why this made it into a history book. This is apocryphal. This is lore. This is legend. Like, yes, it happened 200 years prior to the start of the campaign, but there's no reason to talk about a battle between two people. It's like the 237-year-old feud, but this is the first time I've heard of them. Teizao and Gabor the Lame don't get mentioned before this moment. Like, so we don't know anything about them. They're just these legendary figures who appear out of nowhere. Apparently, at a 237-year-old feud that just ends. 4 new emperors. The career of Ichi the Highwayman ends in his death. Again, a name we're getting told for the first time. Um, like, and it's with his death too. That's just lazy. The mines of the Mountain of Iron are closed. Uh, don't know who that is. Don't know what that is. Doesn't give me any reason to care about what that is. New emperors, monastery, emperor. A monastery is destroyed. That's actually pretty interesting. That's worth noting. Um, Takanaka family is founded. That could be interesting. Um, the Hori family is founded. Shrine of the River Dragon is built. Hojo War begins. So that's like 15 years ago. We've now reached recent history. And we have the Battle of Norinoshima ends the Hojo War. So this war lasts 6 years, and we don't get anything told about it. We don't get told anything about it aside from it begins and it ends. Then it's like the Hojo forces get defeated, but then Hojo Kawakuba is named shogun. Niwa is appointed shogun daimyo of Shimayama. Uh, Gonijo is now the emperor village of Anan, burned by troops of the shogunate. Shogun daimyo. Construction begins in Miami, and then the PCs show up. So we're given 150 years of history where nothing really happens. Sorry, 1,500 years of history where nothing really happens. There's 3 wars, a puppet emperor, some feud between 2 people we don't know anything about. Like by the 1400s, Japan had interactions with people. Like we get one interaction with Fantasy China, and they kind of just show up, leave their religion, and we never hear from them again. Um, like, I don't think Dave Cook knows what to put into history. It's like the timeline of Kozukura, and then it throws in a bunch of stuff that we don't have any reason to care about. Like, if you're going to give me a timeline, give me stuff that is relevant. Like, this paragraph, these 2 paragraphs here, are the only really relevant things. Where it's like, here's how Kozukura got created, here's how he got settled, the Earth Spirit Emperor showed up, and then the humans came in. Like, I'm more interested in these colorful legends that they talk about offhand. And it gives this image. The issue is that it gives this image where it's like Japan had 1,500 years of relative peace, but not really. But not really any reason to think they didn't. But they had some wars, but they weren't really impactful and they didn't last too long. But otherwise, it was peaceful, even though they went through all these different emperors and empresses. But we don't explain that because it was peaceful. We went through these. It was mostly bored for 1,500 years. That's exactly what it is. It was nothing happened for 1,500 years. We have the maps that we kind of skimmed through. And if you're gonna give me like nothing happened for 1,500 years, don't put it in a game. There's no reason for that. Don't be like we were around for 1,500 years and nothing happened. Especially when we're talking about Japan, which has a recorded history for way more than 1,500 years. Let's kind of look through this. Let's look through the province book. But first, I'm gonna go run and use the washroom really quickly. And to take a break from this module that's making me kind of angry. Because, like, I don't know, those really 2 pages just felt like space filler. There was no real reason for them. They don't impact anything. But I'm gonna go over and use the washroom. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Um, I mean, yes, the module is trash, but it's important to know why it's trash. Um, your dad? Congratulations. I didn't know you and Ted were trying. Uh, Stars of the Daimyo is a campaign set and a series of adventures within the for use with the AD&D Oriental Adventures rules. Obviously, you need the Oriental Adventures rules and the Dungeon Master's Guide. In addition, it is helpful to have the monster manual handy for easy reference. The module includes a small color map of the continent of Karatur, a larger map of Miyama Province on the island of Kozakura, a book of adventures and maps, as well as a book of background information that you are now holding. This book, the Province book, has information about the island of Kozakura and the provinces of Miyama. Most of the book deals with Miyama, the starting point for your adventures in the mystical Orient. I hate that phrase. The mystical Orient. Before describing Miyama Province, it is necessary to know something about Kozakura. Thus, this book begins with some general information about the geography, climate, government, and politics of the island of Kozakura. After laying this foundation, the province book focuses on Miyama Province. Information about Miyama includes its geography, resources, history, government, politics, towns, castles, monasteries, temples, landholders, monsters, notable NPCs, and a gazetteer that gives detailed information on many of the hexes of the Miyama Province map. Thus, Miyama Province can be the starting point and center of your Oriental campaign. Ugh. Read this book before starting the adventures in the adventure book. This book enables you to provide your players with the necessary background they need for the various adventures. As you read, feel free to highlight important sections of text, make notes in the margins, or change descriptions as you see fit. Miyama Province is your campaign's world, and you are free to shape it to your purposes. The lands of Karatar are inspired by historical time periods of the Orient, using the culture and way of life of those times. But not really. Miyama Province is inspired by the Japanese culture of the Kamakura, though. The Kamakura through the Sengoku periods. This time in Japan's history was marked by civil war and the rise of the independent daimyos, each struggling to gain and keep the title of shogun, the supreme ruler of Japan. Oriental Adventures is a fantasy game, however, and the information here is not historically exact. Furthermore, the foreign words and their translations are meant to convey the flavor of the Orient and not necessarily exact Japanese usages. So this is such a loaded sentence. Because what this is literally saying is, we're not liable for the fact that we're white people who don't understand what's happening. Like, this is my issue with... This is basically tokenism, is what this is. This is the difference between tokenism and representation. If you want to have your game set in the East, that's fine. That's awesome. I love games set in like Japan or China. But you need to ask why. You need to ask why you're doing this. If you want to do it because it's cool, that's not a good reason to do it. If you're doing it to be like, we just want the flavor of it, that's not a good reason. If you're actually doing it because you're like, I want to tell a story within this world because, I'm in a position of privilege and I'm able to convey these stories in a way where people are going to read them, that's good. That's actually a really good reason for it. Like Percy Jackson. Trying to think. They have one character. I think his name is Frank. Frank Chang. I want to double check that one. Heroes of Olympus. Yeah, Frank Chang. Frank Chang is Asian diaspora. Um, he's descended from like Chinese people of legend. Um, and and Rick Riordan does a pretty good job with him. He doesn't make a point of being like, yes, he's Chinese because I want him to be. He's Chinese because Rick Riordan wanted to tell the story that Chinese people could relate to, that Chinese diaspora, that Chinese children who grew up in America could relate to, and that's a good reason for it. Conveying the flavor of the Orient, uh, is not a good reason for it, especially if you're not going to do the proper research to do it correctly. But this whole paragraph here is really, really bad and speaks to how bad it will be. Because it literally reads as, we didn't do any research, and we don't need to do research because it's a fantasy game, even though we're inspiring it off of Japan. Kozakura is west of Karatur, the isle that separates the Celestial and Eastern Seas. Kozakura consists of the islands of Shinkoku, Tenmei, Mikidono, and Hinomoto. Of these, Shinkoku is the largest, forming a supine arc 1,400 miles in length. On the northern side lies Tenmei, separated from Shinkoku by the inner sea. On the southern side are Hinomoto and Mikidono. Between them runs Amakaiko, blah blah blah. Active volcanoes. I'm just gonna start skimming through this, see if anything catches my attention, because like geography is hard to mess up. Here, this one's probably interesting. Life in these small valleys is hard and lonely, unappealing to the majority of Kozakura's people, because nobody lives in valleys. Didn't you know that? Nobody ever lives in valleys. Most of the population lives on one of three large plains. These areas, although not perfectly flat, provide broad expanses of fertile agricultural land. The largest of these plains is centered around the imperial capital. Rich in rice production, the Dai Plain has been the object of political struggle for centuries. Whoever controls the Dai Plain controls the heart of Kozakura. So, yes, Asian people like rice. It's a very cheap thing to make and is really useful when the waters keep flooding over areas and you need to produce a crop that not only can survive the constant flooding, but thrives in the constant flooding. Thus, rice. Rice paddies. Building your country around one of those is a bad idea, because rice paddies are typically built in areas where there is constant flooding. It's one of those things where which came first? The flooding came first, and then we built the rice paddies. Not we were there first, and then the rice paddies showed up. The second Great Plain is located on the blah blah blah. You build a castle on the swamp 5 times. Okay, to be fair, white people are stupid. Like, Disneyland lives on swamp ground. It will sink one day. I don't know when, but it will. Okay, so like this is actually pretty good. The Johto Plain is the second largest in size and food production, although far from the imperial center and somewhat isolated, has proved a useful power base for rising warlords. Take away the food, you give yourself a substantial like lead against the opposition. Ways of Chicago, which is still sinking. Yep. Okay, and then so the 3 areas are basically grows rice, which is problematic. Has large food production, very important. And this one is like an important trade and messaging area. If you can control that, like, that's actually correct. If you control the port, you control what comes in and out. You can control the country. You're not sure you've ever lived somewhere that wasn't a floodplain? I mean, yeah. It's difficult not to, but the thing is that you don't build up around it with the intent of food production. You build up around it out of necessity, and then the food production is like useful. Um, there's farmland and forest in Kozakura. Um, where the rain falls heavily, or mountain streams are diverted to the fields, farmers grow rice. Again, that's not really how it works. Um, the fields are divided into small squares and rectangles, crisscrossed by many dikes and irrigation ditches, for the growing of rice requires water. Each spring the paddies become flooded, muddy pools and dikes and narrow paths. Uh, sorry, muddy pools, the dikes and narrow paths. As the rice grows, the fields are drained and become passable again. The farmland that cannot be irrigated properly is given to the growing of other crops. No! So, okay, fine. The farmland that can't be irrigated properly is given to the growing of other crops. But, like, the flooding is literally supposed to take up the entire area. There is nowhere the irrigation won't reach. Because, like, the flooding should happen that often, which is why the rice paddies exist. You don't have a rice paddy right next to a vegetable crop because the vegetable crop will inevitably get caught by the flooding. Um, it's possible I'm misreading this. It's possible that it's saying that in areas where the farmland can't be irrigated properly. But even then, like, if you can't irrigate properly, then it's not farmland. That's really bad farmland. Yeah, this was Dave Cook, I think. Um, there actually isn't a writer for this. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's David Cook. Um, I'm actually curious. Yeah, the people who worked on this book were David Cook, Mike Brault, Jeff Easley, David Sutherland, Dennis Koth, Marcia Koth, Linda Back, and Colleen O'Malley. And most of those people did like art. The only editor was Mike Brault. Everybody else was like interior art, cartography, typography, keylining. So the only two people who really worked on this were two white guys. Um, the women were in the cartography and typography and keylining. They were in charge of the art and making sure it looked pretty. Um, they did not have any say in how it was written. But yeah, that's not really how rice works, which is stupid. The forests are thick with bamboo and trees, and the ground is rugged and broken. I'm gonna look up what a bamboo forest looks like, because like this is the one time you'll be okay with that. I don't want women's names attached to this. Um, so let's look at what a bamboo forest looks like for important purposes. Because yes, bamboo forests exist. Yes, they're grass and not really trees, but as we can see with these bamboo forests, the bamboo grows. There's something missing here. There's something really missing. Uh, Aside from the bamboo, which is a grass, I will concede, there really aren't that many trees. Like, there are some trees, but it's almost mostly bamboo. And there's a reason for that. Bamboo is thick, it takes sunlight, it's like they were all British, yeah. Um, it's thick, it's hard to really grow trees with grass around, because, especially like tall grass like this. Um, because grass is also a weed. it sucks up a lot of nutrients and stuff from the ground that will steal from other trees. Um, Fun fact. So, like, scrolling through these bamboo forests, there just aren't many trees. So, when Gygax talks about like it's only a weed if it's not harmful to humans. Wait, what? It's only a weed if it's not harmful to humans. Oh, useful. If it's not useful to, I can read. I have been reading all day. I was like, what? That doesn't make sense. Yeah, weed is useful to humans. Orchids are considered weeds. Grass is also considered weeds. I don't know what the criteria is, but orchid is technically a weed. Um, Dandelions too, I believe. Dandelions are weeds. Um, I generally don't know what the criteria is. No. Orchids are categorized as weeds. They are beautiful. I'm disagreeing with your premise, is what I'm doing. I wasn't saying that orchids are useless. I'm saying that um, there are certain plants that are considered weeds that are also useful and not harmful. Um, Dandelions and orchids are among them. Uh, but yes, this thing where it's like, yeah, plenty of weeds are useful. A weed is whatever you don't want to grow in there. I think it's about how many nutrients it takes up, like whether or not it'll drain nutrients from what's around it. That's what I was told, um, which is part of why orchids need to be kept alone and away from other plants because they are weeds and will literally kill the other plants. Um, but yeah, when it's like forests cover most of the area, forests are thick with bamboo and trees, and the ground is rugged and broken. As we can see, that's not really true. That isn't true. That's like I will give you that there are areas where the ground is rugged and broken because you're in a forest. That happens in forests. Um, but like, there's nothing particularly weird about like noteworthy about these except for the fact that you know it's bamboo instead of forest. And even then, like Japan has forests that aren't bamboo forests. Um, Still, even in its wild state, the forest holds a bounty of resources. Opposed to its tame state. Those tame forests. Workers go out every day and cut bamboo. Hunters search for game. Loggers take trees. Google says orchids are weeds. Yeah, I know they are. I listen. 10% of the time, I know what I'm talking about. 100. I know 100% of what I'm talking about. Um, Peasants gather mushrooms and other exotic growths for food and medicine. Ah, yes, exotic food, mushrooms. It is a place of refuge for humans and non-humans alike. Bandits and escaped prisoners hide in the mountains. Korobokoro and Henga yokai live in remote valleys, safely away from intruders. Dragons haunt lakes and swamps. It's not. It's not how dragons work. Ah, yes, those exotic mushrooms. So I learned this from Daniel, who's going to be like my main source for this book. Um, so the way dragons were affiliated, and the reason they look the way they look, allegedly, is that they mimicked the movement of rivers. When the river flooded, that was the dragon being angry. Um, but like dragons didn't really deal with lakes and swamps. Dragons were in rivers. There's a reason dragons look the way they do. They were in rivers and oceans. They emulated uh, rivers and currents. That's why we have noodle dragons. I mean, there were other dragons too, but Gygax doesn't know about those. Like the pig dragon. which Daniel taught me about. Um, yeah, the, there is a reason dragons look the way they do in Asian culture, because rivers. It wasn't like Western dragons where they were like a metaphor for greed and uh, fed off the fare of fed off the fare of lizards. Sorry, fed off their fare of reptiles. That's what it was. Reptiles and fire. That's what those are the two main fares that led to the conception of the Western dragon. The Eastern dragons were created because rivers. Not to be confused with the pig dragon. Pig dragons are cool. Um, but yeah, dragons did not really haunt lakes and swamps. Is what I'm getting at. Although located well north of the equator, blah blah. So there's mild weather. Yeah, there are pig dragons. Let me see if I can find an example of. Yeah, okay. Um, so this is the pig dragon. Quick diversion. Um, where you had like the ring. Ooh, here's a good picture. So these were how dragons were kind of depicted at some points. Um, where they were closer to pigs than dragon. Um, yeah, it's really cool. Pig dragons are zoomorphic forms with a pig-like head and elongated, limbless body, coiled around the head and described as suggestively fetal. Early pig dragons are thick and stubby, and later examples have more graceful, snake-like bodies. Pig dragons were produced by the Hongshan culture, along with the same culture's jade eagles. They were often found as grave goods. Pig bones have been interred alongside uh, humans at Hongshan burial sites, suggesting that the animal had some ritual significance. There's some later speculation that pig dragon is the first representation of the Chinese dragon. The character for the dragon in the earliest Chinese writing had a similar coiled form, as do later jade dragon amulets for the Shang period. Um, I'm not super familiar on the history of pig dragons. Daniel actually studied this. This was part of his um, like his studies in archaeology and anthropology. Um, but you can kind of see, like, it's not really reptilian, but you can see like the tail and all that stuff. I'm trying to remember exactly what Daniel was saying about it. But you can see the tail, um, and then like the pig snout and all of that stuff in these rings. Um, yeah, Eastern dragons are actually really cool, and not all of them were the noodle dragon. They were also the pig dragons, which, yeah. But like I said, Gygax doesn't care about those. Gygax is only interested in the noodle dragon because that's the Oriental dragon that everybody knows about. But yeah, okay. So there's weather. Weather exists. It is temperate. Um, there's snowfall in the mountains. Oh boy, place names. Part of creating a campaign world is to give places authentic sounding names. Not authentic names, authentic sounding names. Normally, oh boy, normally this is not too difficult. The world of Oriental Adventures, however, is unfamiliar to most DMs and players. Look at a good map of Japan and note the styles of names used. You can use these names, or you can create new names that have the sound and feel of Oriental names. You can also use the list of suffixes below to help create proper meanings for your Oriental place names. Simply add syllables to the start of the proper suffix to create an appropriate sounding name. A mountain could be named Ujoyama, using the Yama mountain suffix. A river could be named Furagawa, again using one of the suffixes given below. So, yes, when I'm creating Fantasy Europe, I will take syllables and smash them together and call it a day. I'll sometimes add apostrophes and call it a day. Like, let's see. I'm gonna look around my room right now and go. Siamen. There we go, Siamen. That's a country now in a fantasy world. Siamen. Uh, that's how they do language in Europe. Yep, that's what I just did. Siamen. Siamen is now a country. There's an apostrophe there. Saya apostrophe M apostrophe N. We now have a fantasy country in a world. The difference is, I'm not claiming to emulate another language. I am looking around my room and smashing syllables together to create a world of my own creation. I'm not trying to be like, this is going to be an American-based city that I'm going to name. I'm going to name New Osang. New Osang. Because that's stupid and genuinely problematic. You don't just smash things together in a way to emulate. You do research onto the area and say, okay, so that's what these languages. That's how your naming conventions were, and that's what I'm. So I'm gonna do something similar, like you have New Azulon in Avatar. They didn't try to emulate anywhere, but they did do a pretty good job of being like, okay, we're gonna name this place after this person in charge. That's good. That's fine. New Azulon, named after my grandfather, Azulon. That you don't need to do more than that. Um, but if you're going to emulate another culture, you need to do research on it. You can't just be like, let's see, Mountain Pass Toge. So this mountain pass is going to be called Suntoge because that could mean something. That could mean something genuinely offensive. And what it's saying is like, I don't need to do more research past here. At least it was named New Ozai. No, there's also New Ozai. What? Um, like point. You have Bana, Hana, Kubi, Misaki, Saki, Zaki. I can guarantee each of these represents something important that are just being ignored. Um, like I'm sure there's like in Gawa and Kawa is just an anglicization difference. Um, Kaiko and Seito is probably similar, but like I haven't done my research on these things. I haven't done my research to say, oh well, the difference between Kaiko and Seito is actually just a linguistic difference. There could be a big difference there. It could be something has more significance than meaning X river. Unlike the English, who are just like, ah yes, we shall call this river. I don't fucking know, river, like what they did in Ireland. Like, there are reasons other countries and civilizations are going to give a name to something, especially if they're actually given a name to something. Um, like a pond or they're not going to just name every other pond. That's like that's an English thing to do, to just name everything. The deities presented in the following history are created specifically to provide background for the campaign. DMs who are familiar with Japanese mythology or who have already created mythology for their campaign may want to substitute this for what is provided. No one knows when the first humans arrived in the islands of Kozakura. The Korobokoro, who had inhabited the island for ages, kept no written records. Their oral tales are filled with stories, and their heroes battle in foreign chiefs and gain in wondrous and rare gifts. The Korobokoro themselves maintain that the humans came from over the seas. Humans have no recorded history of this migration. So this is really bad because it emulates Japanese history. If you replace Korobokoro with the Ainu and humans with the Japanese, this is what happened. Um, According to the chronicles of various temples and monasteries, the islands of Kozakura were the creations of one or more gods, of which Shikoku was first. There is no agreement on which gods were responsible, but a general consensus maintains that it was Heavenly Brother and Heavenly Sister. They don't get names? We just get Heavenly Brother and Heavenly Sister? At least riff off of freaking Susanoo. Ugh. Like, this just sounds like a bad version of the Jade Emperor. The Korobokuro believed the world, and thus the Kozakura, were created by one of the animal spirits, possibly the bear god or the eagle goddess. Oh my goodness. You can't take real world analogs and just not do your research. You can't. It's a problem. Because, like, so when Rick Riordan, to give an example of a real world situation where somebody took actual beliefs, when Rick Riordan decided that he was going to include Greek paganism, I think it was the Hellen. I'm trying to remember which one it was he included. I can't remember which iteration of Greek paganism he included, but he included it in one of his stories, and there were people who still believed in this. There were still people who followed that religion, and they didn't like how he represented it. He did it incorrectly. They contacted him. He said, "Shoot, you're right. I'm sorry. I didn't know there were people still following this religion. I should have done my research. I should have been more careful. I will contact my publisher and we will change this." And there are now iterations of that book with a different, with different write-ins because Rick Riordan made that change, which is why you don't use real-world religions in your game. This is supposed to be Izanagi and Izanami. Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, give them names. I'll be honest, I only know, like, a handful of Japanese mythological names because I'm more familiar with Shintoism, which doesn't really have gods. It has the idea that we are all part of the earth and will return to the earth. So you need to worship the things around you, give them respect. Yeah, that was really good of him, and it taught him an important lesson. Don't riff off of real-world religions without doing your research, because you don't know if somebody's still worshiping them. Shintoism is still around. I'm trying to remember what this religion is called. You just know them because you look at the ones you look for in Persona. Okay, yeah, so the Shinto kami do exist. If you're going to worship Shinto, yeah, okay, so they were from Shinto. Izanagi no Mikoto was the first man, and Izanami no Mikoto was the first woman. Amaterasu Omikami was the sun goddess. Ebisu was one of the seven gods of fortune. So yeah, Shintoism is still being worshipped. It's not a dead religion. That's what I'm getting at. Like, yes, it's a minor religion now, but it is still a real world religion. And this is riffing off of it. Quite a lot of paganism is making a resurgence. Yes, it is. And then we have the animal spirits. I don't know about the Ainu religion. I don't know very much about the Ainu people. I don't know what they believe. But I do know the Korobokuro are supposed to be are riffing off of the Ainu people who are still alive and are still doing their thing. And Asachi is also thing. Yeah. And he's taking and I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the Ainu believe. But this kind of feels like he's taking indigenous people's beliefs and just slapping it onto the Ainu, regardless of what they believe. Because the bear god and the eagle goddess sound like something like what white people think Native Americans believe in. Like, it gives me Brother Bear vibes. The bear goddess will determine your fate. All agree that the Shinkoku has been the home of the gods for untold millennia. Gradually, the other islands came into being. Tenmei was created when Heavenly Sister was banished from Shinkoku by Fair's Wind Sun. So, this goes back to what I was saying with translations. If you're going to translate literally, you're going to run into problems, which is why people who are fluent in one language but not fluent in the other will have translation issues. It's why people who are fluent in Japanese and fluent in Chinese will miss words in English, because if you translate word for word, you will miss the grammar. You'll miss the intent. If you're writing something and you're translating something and you're fluent in both languages, and you take one language and you intentionally translate it in such a way where you're doing it to convey a sense of mysticism, such as Fair's Wind Sun, you're an asshole. Especially when you're making up what's going on. There's no reason for it. I had issue with it in Yakuza. I am taking issue with it here. There's no reason to be going like to skip words. There's no issue to translate names literally. If there's a name, you keep the name as is. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Let me think. I can't think of any names right now. But like, okay, you know what? I'll use my own name. If you're translating something from Hebrew into English and you see Peter, you don't translate it to Man of Rock. You don't. There's no need for it. You wouldn't be like, and Jesus spoke to Man of Rock. You would say Jesus spoke to Peter. Heavenly Sister, you could just say Izanami. Izanami was banished from Shinkoku by Susanoo. I think Susanoo is just storms, but the point still stands. You don't need to translate the name to be what they are. You keep them as they are. That's how names work. You don't translate names, unless it's like Piotr into Peter for like a localization thing. And even then, there are issues with that because Piotr and Peter are still two different names. It's two different translations of the same name, but it's still two different names. You're taking away one's culture when you translate it. Unless they're okay with it. That's a different issue. Hinamoto was created when Heavenly Brother declared his retirement, and Mikadono was created accidentally in the war between Fire Bright and Fair's Wind Sun. Korobokuro were the first settlers of these islands, and their stories tell how the islands were given to Point Piyuan, a great hero of their race, as a gift from the gods. Korobokuro. Wait, so the Korobokuro. So I'm really confused. The Korobokuro believe the world was created by the animal spirits, but the Korobokuro believe in the gods of the human people. A great hero of the race as a gift from the gods. The Korobokuro could keep the island so long as they paid proper reverence. Like, I'm not saying that religious, oh gosh, what's it called? Um, um, oh, what's it called? What's it called? What's it called? I can't remember what it's called. When you take one religion and it meshes with another religion. Um, because Shinto did it too when they kind of like meshed into Buddhism. Um, Syncretism. Thank you. I'm not saying syncretism doesn't exist, and that the Korobokuro couldn't have looked at the human gods and like vice versa and been like, oh, our gods are actually the same, because the Egyptians did that with the Greek gods and vice versa, and Buddhism and Shintoism did syncretism as well. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but you need to make it clear that that's what's happening. You can't just be like, oh yeah, the Egyptians rolled up and they actually were like, oh yeah, our gods are the same. No, you need to have the story to explain what's happening there. So long as they paid proper reference to the gods and obeyed special taboos. That's really problematic. Yeah, and the Catholics with the saints, when they were like, yeah, your gods are actually our saints or demons, depending on how we like them. Like it happens. It does happen, but you need to be respectful of it happening, and treat it well. Later stories tell how the Korobokoro people broke these taboos, and the humans came to take the islands away. Wow. Wow. Recorded human history begins with the accounts of several popular family tribes. Each tribe controlled a small portion of. Yeah, that goddess of fertility, definitely actually a male demon. Your underworld god. Oh, no, no, no. See, what happens is that's actually a demon. Death is actually to be feared. Hades is a bad guy. Surprise. Um, Recorded human history begins with the accounts of several powerful family tribes. Each tribe controlled a small portion of Shinkoku and constantly struggled with the other tribes in the Korobokuro for more territory. Then the Yakimatsu tribe presented the claim that its tribal chief, Mori, had been chosen by the gods to lead all the people of Shinkoku. Several miraculous events occurred that helped substantiate his title as emperor. In a world where magic exists, it'd have to be some seriously good miracles for me to be like, ah, yes, you have proven you're an emperor. Unless the people are really stupid, which is what we've been getting. The way Kosakura is governed and the politics that control it seem strange to many outsiders. Ah, yes. The many outsiders. Um, what happened to Astarte? Was she replaced? Oh, the goddess of fertility. Got it. Got it. Yeah. Hades is my beef. Um, all underworld goddesses got like such a shitty deal when Catholicism rolled up. Like, we're gonna decide whether you're a saint or a demon, and we're gonna decide it based on our desires. Hades, a demon, because we can't have you enjoying the underworld. Because we need to scare you into behaving. Um, the way Kozakura is governed and the politics that control it seems strange to many outsiders. Yep, you know, because if it's not following the Western monarchy system or democracy, depending on where you're from, it's strange and foreign. Somebody who I admire and respect greatly on Twitter was talking about it with like expats and stuff. How one of the expats was like, "Oh, are you making foreign food to a Filipino in the Philippines who is making Filipino food?" And they're like, "Yeah, you were making something exotic, right?" And I'm like, you can't ask somebody who is local to an area and is making local food if they're making something foreign just because it's strange to you. It's not foreign. I'm from here. You're a migrant. That's exactly, and Mahar hit it on the nose with that. And it's the same thing here. It's just like the way Kozakura is governed is foreign. Um, oh gosh. Oh gosh. Um, So it's like a bit of history on it. The offices of the imperial government of Kozakura are, in order of power, Shiken, retired emperor, shogun, emperor. In order of prestige, emperor, retired emperor, shogun, Shiken. So the more power you have, the less prestige you have. It makes no sense. Like this sounds like it's written to just like I'm it genuinely sounds like it's written to be like, oh no, you see, what they do is backwards. You want to make it about the way Paul Kruger described in his book, but also it might kill you. It might. Um, Worth noting, the Hojo clan were also real people. I knew they sounded familiar. The Hojo and the Honda were actually real people. Okay, so the Shiken was supreme ruler, a regent for the shogun. The Shiken derived power from the shogun. In actuality, the shogun had been reduced to a figurehead in similar marginalizing manner, just as the emperor and imperial court earlier had been reduced to figureheads by the shogun. Okay, so Shiken's in charge. Then it should be Shiken, shogun, retired emperor, in order of power. And in order of prestige, like this still doesn't make sense because the people should be aware of what's going on. And I don't know. It strikes me as one of those things where it's like we're doing this to point out how backwards they are. Like, okay, you know what? I guess looking at it in terms of like the queen and the prime minister, there's more prestige in being the queen, but there's more power in being prime minister. But calling attention to it as being strange, because like I can make the British example work with this, where it's like the queen has less power than the prime minister, in a sense, because she is purely a figurehead. But there's more prestige in being the queen because of the fact that she's a figurehead. Um, but them doing this makes it sound like it's foreign and backwards, even though it's what the British people do. And this was written by TSR UK. There's nothing here that's specifically like unusual. Um, I'm not gonna go through that because like I said, I'm not familiar with Japanese naming resources, Japanese naming things and stuff. Um, I don't like that they're using the exact same months that they do in Karatur because Japan and China don't have the same months. That doesn't make sense. We have like local governments. Um, a breakdown here of this. The armies. It's interesting that so. Hmm, the armies of Miyama. I actually want to call attention to this. The armies of Miyama on constant duty. 50 mounted samurai of second or third level. First level samurai. 150 first level samurai. 100 first level bushi. Uh, Available in the province, 3,800 first level bushi, 800 first level samurai or commanders, um, 370 first level samurai, 135 first level bushi, 9 warships, first level bushi, first level samurai, first level samurai, first level bushi, first level samurai, first level sohei. In the entirety of the Miyama armies, nobody is better than third level, and there are only 50 people of second or third level in the entire province who are working in the army. I can almost guarantee if I were to open up a random like setting book for Forgotten Realms, there would be at least one general who is of higher level than third level. The people who are entering this country are already sixth level. Yes, there are, call it 8 adventurers entering the country and a couple thousand people in the army. They will lose in numbers. But it's telling that the strongest people in the army are weaker than adventurers entering the country. Yeah, a general should be like level 10. But the most powerful person in the army is a third level samurai. Um, we have the religions. I don't really want to look at because it's really long, and I'm familiar with Shinto, but I'm not like knowledgeable in Shinto. It's not something I can comment on. I genuinely don't like that the temples are associated with the Way of Enlightenment, because like even though yes Taoism exists, Buddhism is what came to Japan, and calling it enlightenment is an issue. It's the same thing with like the Age of Enlightenment. Surprise, they weren't. Um, it's this idea that you can only achieve wisdom and knowledge by being in these temples, or that they give you wisdom or knowledge which you don't, which is stupid, and it's problematic because like that's drenched in Orientalism, and it's wrong. Um, the samurai families, uh, outcasts, the Gazette. Um, so you have like the empty province sections. You can just like slap one of these into an area and call it a day, even if it doesn't make sense. Um, no, I'm kidding. I imagine that there's a reason. There's a method to how it works. Fox God Shrine. Oh boy. Um, the fox god is honored as protector of the rice crop. Oh boy. Ooh, buddy. Um, let's take villages. Um, more shrines to a poet, which like they'll exist. I'm not gonna say they don't exist. Shrine of the monkey god. Oh god. Located in this field is a small shrine to the monkey god. Currently residing at the shrine is a monkey Henki Shin Shukenja, posing as a human. As the master of the shrine, he carefully plays his role and attends to the needs of the local peasants. However, at night he changes into monkey form and roams the countryside, playing tricks on others. His tricks cause great harm and woe to those who are secretly corrupt and evil, and thus he helps the oppressed and downtrodden. I mean, so yes, Wukong does exist. Sun Wukong exists in Asian culture. I'm not going to say just Chinese because, like, if you've read Dragon Ball Z, or if you've watched Dragon Ball, and you're familiar with Gohan, yes, Gohan is in fact inspired by Sun Wukong. Um, I think Gohan is actually the Japanese name for Sun Wukong. Um, 'Cause I think it means son of the monkey or the monkey king. No, Goku means monkey king, and Gohan means son of the monkey. Um, that one took me a while to remember. Um, so it exists in Japan as well. Um, but this is like a little bit more malicious than Sun Wukong or Goku ever were. Um, Shrine of the Sun Goddess. Um, Goblin Spider Lair. Fun fact, not actually have doesn't have actually anything to do with goblins. So yeah, this is just like filled with like flavor stuff. Um, there's a lot of it. Uh, none of it seems good. Just skimming through it, it's just like uh, minimal research to do stuff. Um, some names, a glossary to help you add color and detail to your Kozakuran campaign. The following glossary of words and terms is provided. Some of these are used in the province and adventure books and are defined here for your convenience. I don't speak Japanese. I don't know. Oh god. Tofu, a staple food made from the congealed proteins of soybeans. Way to make tofu sound gross. Like, tofu is a delicious food. Oh, and here's a bibliography. Nobuo and Carol Akiyama, Japanese at a glance. Peter Judd Arnson, the medieval Japanese daimyo and Uichi family's rule of Suo and Nagato. Baedeker's Japan. Reverend John Batchelor's The Ainu of Japan. So the Japan are actually relevant here. Oh god. That's what I was afraid of. The Koruboku are outright analogs for the Ainu. And he decided that the best source for reading about the Ainu was a reverend. I'm sure there is definitely no alternate thing there. Um, Ian Burama's Behind the Mask, John Whitney Hall's Government and Local Power in Japan, uh, Chikafusa's Kitabutake's A Chronicle of Gods and Sovereigns. Um, so again, he's admitted. So the bibliography here is telling because he's admitting to um, what he's trying to copy, and badly. Morton Schmorleitz's Castles in Japan, and Richard Saul Werman's Tokyo Access. So we have like an admission of guilt of what he's trying to mimic. And I think that's why the bibliography is really important because it shows what he's trying to copy. It admits he copied the Ainu and he copied the Japanese kami. And then he just did it really badly. I'm surprised sake. Oh, here we go. Sake, rice wine. Okay, that's not wrong. Um, but you can chat again. What was wrong with it earlier? Why could you not chat earlier? Um, and then we have a colored map down here. Twitch was being weird. That's rude of it. So yeah, we have Kozakura. Why is this place shaped like Italy? I really don't like that this area is called the Celestial Sea. Because I think that is a thing. And it's not an ocean. The Plain of Horses. Oh god. The Warren States. They don't have a name. They're just the Warren States. Okay, this one I'm actually going to take issue with because I can't read that. You don't slap on black on dark like that. That's just bad typography. Then you have a map of like the currents and stuff. Scream, yeah. From the log of the leaping dolphin. Oh god, the leaping dolphin. 110th day. The gale may stop for 2 days. My ship is driven before it, and the Magus is as helpless as a wee babe. Akito names the winds Typhoon. Oh god! Typhoon in his heathen tongue. Is this a real thing? Is the leaping dolphin... Leaping dolphin. Is this a... Did Gygax... Did David Cook make this up, or is this a real book? 110th day, the gale nay stops for 12 days. My ship is driven before it, and the Magus is as helpless as a wee babe. Akito mentions the wind's typhoon in his heathen tongue. That is like the worst quote you could have used for this. Like, I don't know if it's real or if it's fictional. If I don't know if David Cook wrote this or if he copied it from somewhere else. I, I like Google isn't telling me anything about this thing. I'm pretty sure David Cook made this up. If it's from something else, I want to know. May just sounds like he wrote it for this. Yeah, but Akito names the wind's typhoon in his heathen tongue is such a phrase. Drawn by the lure of adventure and riches, a crew of seamen sails valiantly into uncharted seas. In the squalid dens of the poor districts, tale hints at a land of untold riches across the waves. But getting there is only the beginning. Across the waters lies Kozakura. Yeah, way to way to make up a racist Scottish person, dude. Across the waters lie Kozakura, a land of mystery and danger. There you will discover new cultures, strange values, secret powers, and fabulous terrors. New cultures, strange values, secret powers, and fabulous terrors. For Kozakura is a land of Oriental Adventures. Swords of the Daimyo is the first module designed for use with the AD&D Oriental, yep, strange values. Foreign in their own land. Swords of the Daimyo includes descriptions and maps of the islands of Kozakura, detailed information and maps of Miyama province of Kozakura, and a series of adventures to introduce old and new player characters to the intrigues of the Orient. So, that was the whole thing. It was a whole thing that we read. I know I skipped out the bits of the province because that was a lot. Like, just a lot of text. It's like 30 pages of stuff that's just like lists of text. And I didn't really have any desire to read that. I'm not qualified to read that. I'm not Japanese, nor am I even Japanese diaspora, or a studier of of Japan. I'm familiar with aspects of Japan, but not to the point where I could comment on the map. Aside from like, this is Orientalism. Um, I did do a lot. Um, and I think I got angry. Like I don't think I've gotten this angry over a thing in a while. But I got angry over how they were writing dialogue. Especially because it's like it sets the scene for how they expect the GMs to behave, and it's very like mystical, mystical Orient, where you speak different because to show how mystic and Oriental you are. I'm just gonna call it early. Just to use a lane. That was it. I'm not gonna say it was fun. Oh, it looks like Twitch is actually a little bit borked. Um, I'm not gonna say it was fun because it wasn't really fun. It was an experience. It was a time we did things. Um, do you read Gygax's book next time? Um, so I'm not going to read Oriental Adventures because the Agents Represent channel is doing that, and I've done that with them. Um, I may give my own thoughts about it eventually, but not while it's still fresh in my mind because I don't want to just outright plagiarize. Um, Daniel and Steve and Co. If you want to learn about them, you can go to the Agents Represent channel on YouTube. The VODs are all up there. Um, there's a link to it in my Discord because I linked the episode I was on. Um, yeah, great channel. Um, but yeah, I'm not gonna do Oriental Adventures because they're doing it. It was interesting. It's interesting, and I will say that like I'm not gonna be like It's not racist because it was the 80s. Because yes, it was still racist. It's just what was what is racist was more accepted back then. But it is still worth criticizing and critiquing through a modern day lens, because people still make those mistakes. Yeah, it's clearly racist. Um, Roasting Date is kind of fun though. It's an educational experience, and I think education can be interesting. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do for the next one of these. I may do something I'm a little bit more familiar with, something more rooted in Chinese culture. I may do Exalted, but Exalted is like 800 pages, so I may not do Exalted. Be, at least not alone. If I'm doing Exalted, I'm gonna steal somebody to do that one with, because it is a lot, and not just like emotionally a lot. It was actually a lot. It was a time. Yeah, we got mad. Um, so I'd have plenty of content. Yeah, I'd be doing it for like the next year. It took me 2 weeks to go through 70 pages, and I skipped pages. A lot of pages. I skipped like 30 pages. It took me 2 weeks to do 40 pages of reading. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do next. I may do one of the things from the uh, the itch.io bundle called the Wu Day, because that one's interesting and it's based off a premise I've actually done research for and studied up on, so I can give more of an educated opinion on that. Um, I may do Shinobigami, which was actually written by Japanese people, and show what it's like, what a good game written by Asians could look like. Um, I may do Legend of the Elements, because I have a lot of thoughts about Legend of the Elements. Um, a lot of thoughts about the Legend of the Elements. Which, for those of you unfamiliar with Legend of the Elements, it's a Avatar: The Last Airbender powered by the Apocalypse game. Um, I may get Unbreakable and do a read through of some of those adventures, because those are actually really cool. Um, and again, written by Asians. Um, so there's like, I don't want to just be like, fuck these white people who suck. You're still under the Gong origami proficiency, magical origami paper, and the infinite, the everlasting rice mortar. um, don't forget about the ink blot. The ink the writing the magical writing implements that give you a +2 to calligraphy, and that you forge other people's handwriting, because calligraphy and handwriting are clearly the same thing. Um, yeah, I don't just want to be like, fuck these white people writing Asians. Because, yes, it is important to look at it and see what people have done wrong and how we can improve um, going forward. I may do uh, the Oriental Adventures 3.5 and beat Daniel to it. Um, and tease him about it. Um, but no, I'm kidding. Whatever I do, I'll do in a build of the Asians Represent channel, because they're doing good things there. Um, and it's useful to get different perspectives. Mine is a singular perspective. Daniel gets guests on. They're doing an Al Qadim special on. Yeah, I'm gonna scoop them. They're doing Al Qadim on Saturday with people who are um, from that culture, so they can do a good critique on it. Um, because Daniel and Steve are not exactly qualified to do a critique on Al Qadim, because that's not a culture they're from. Um, yeah, Oriental Adventures is really cringe. Um, but yeah, I may do 3.5, because sorry, not 3.5, Oriental Adventure Third Edition, because there's also stuff in there that's worth pulling apart. And I haven't seen their perspective to have it influence mine. Um, We're gonna throw this over to Saint because he's online. He's being a nerd. And we're gonna hope that Twitch works properly. Um, uh, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do tomorrow. Like I said, I'm not sure what I was gonna do next. I may do Lightning Returns. I may just bork around for a few days until I can settle on something. Um, but yeah, this was fun. This was a fun experience. Thank you all for hanging out with me for this and listening to my thoughts on everything that just happened over the past 2 weeks. They were good and good lessons to learn and acknowledge from. Dungeons and Lesbians forever. I mean, no, I'm not actually gonna do that. But until next time, whatever we do tomorrow, be excellent to one another. Party on, dudes, and remember, Magneto is right.